Chapter 5085. This place. Why was there a blink movement secret arts presence? Madame Huang Xi suppressed the dizziness in her head and was about to flip over. She heard messy footsteps outside the door and a voice which wasn't suppressed intentionally. Madame's room is the only one left to search, let's go in and take a look. Search? Search for what? Huang Xi's brows creased slightly as her action of flipping over stopped. She then laid back down and closed her eyes. Very quickly, a group of people rushed into the room and walked around without any scruples, as though they were searching for something. After ascertaining that there was no one else in the room, another swarm of people left the room. Huang Xi wasn't a fool. She was connecting her muddled brain with those people's actions earlier. She had more or less guessed something. She silently released her perception until she was sure that the entire courtyard had quietened down. She then slowly opened her eyes. That group of people dared to barge into her courtyard without any scruples. They must be from the demonic hall. What did they want to search for? Huang Xi pressed her slightly dizzy head as she propped herself up and headed towards Yiqing Luo's room on the second floor. On seeing that there was no one in the room, recalling the attitude of the demonic hall lord towards Yiqing Luo during the day, her expression congealed as she immediately disappeared into the darkness. The main hall of the demonic hall's castle. A lady dressed in a crow feather black dress leaned lazily on the huge obsidian throne, her posture indolent as there wasn't any emotion in her eyes. Her red lips curled into a confident and arrogant sneer, as though she had long controlled everything in the palm of her hands. When Yiqing Luo neared the main hall, she saw such a scene. She hid in the shadows, concealing her presence very well. Suddenly, a bell-like laughter reverberated in the hall. "Overlord, do you really bear to hand her over to me?" When she heard the two words, Overlord, Yiqing Luo's heart jumped. Overlord? Ah, Xian was here too. Then, who was the she that the demonic hall was referring to? That laughter wrapped around Yiqing Luo in strands. After a while, in the cold and spacious hall, a familiar voice with a tinge of indifference and coldness rang out, drowning out the woman's laughter. "If I can't bear to, what will you do?" Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. It was Ah Xian's voice. It was definitely Ah Xian's voice. Is he really here? Moreover, he was together with the devil hole. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman. Was he getting bolder? Yiqing Luo's little fists clenched tightly, restraining the urge to rush out. The demon sovereign laughed charmingly. Dizun is really heartless. If you can't bear to do it, I will be jealous, she laughed and laughed, drawing out the last syllable. Soon after, he suddenly paused, and his voice seemed to be wrapped in a layer of frost. When this prince gets jealous, someone will pay the price. Ha! That cold and thin voice snorted. Then, he indifferently spat out two words, up to you. Soon after, a gust of wind blew past. TSK, what a boring man, but I love him so much. She sighed softly. Yiqing Luo stood silently in the dark, as her expression faintly revealed some treacherous emotions. That voice, it was indeed Ah Xian's. No matter if it was the voice or intonation, or the way he spoke. Indeed, it was Ah Xian. But, she didn't believe it. She understood the meaning behind the devil hall's words. The she in the devil hall's words was probably referring to her. If it was really Ah Xian, why would Ah Xian say the words, up to you, allowing the devil hall to do anything to her? Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5086. After experiencing several fake Ah Xian incidents, plus Yiqing Luo's absolute trust towards DMO Xian, although Yi Qing Luo felt a little upset in her heart. But there was more suspicion than anger. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure what this demonic palace was trying to do. To make a move on a distinguished guest who came to attend the wedding ceremony on their own turf. If this got out of hand, then the wedding would be hard to arrange. She was pondering over it. Suddenly footsteps were heard outside the door. Following that, a group of people hurriedly ran over. "Lord Demonic Palace, there's no sign of that young lady in the room. I've searched the entire courtyard but there's no trace of that young lady." Demonic Palace's exquisite brows rose as she gave a cold smile. "She's rather quick-witted to be able to guess my plan." Yi Qing Luo. No, she couldn't guess it. It was just that her physique was special and couldn't be bewitched. Plus her senses had always been sharp. Especially with the blink movement's secret arts. So she barely avoided Demonic Palace's plan. She really didn't expect that Demonic Palace dared to make a move on her own turf. But this also showed one point. In Demonic Palace's eyes, she actually didn't care about the other three continents' authoritative figures. Or rather, her ambition was no longer just the so-called Lord Demonic Palace. In the Devil region, the three continents each had their own authoritative figures. For example, Demon Phoenix Continent's Madame Huang Xi. And Demonic Palace was the overall authoritative figure of the three continents. Their motive was to restrain the balance of the three continents. This Demonic Palace didn't seem to be worried that Madame Huang Xi would find trouble with her. So what if she ran away? As long as she's still in Devil Head City, she won't be able to escape from my grasp. Demonic Palace gave a charming smile as her tone turned cold. "On account that tomorrow is my wedding day, I'll be merciful and let her off." Demonic Palace paused as the glint in her eyes deepened as her red lips curled into an evil cold arc. "Speaking of this, rather than killing her now, why not let her witness with her own eyes the marriage between me and the Overlord? That scene should be more exciting." As though she had already imagined this scene in her mind, the Demon Queen laughed loudly. Her crow-feathered black dress fluttered with her laughter like ripples, making her look even colder and more elegant like a plum blossom. "All of you can leave." She gave the order. A group of men and horses quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Devil Palace slowly stood up. Her dress fluttered in the wind like black butterfly wings, dreamy and beautiful. Yi Qing Luo stayed in the dark. They stayed there for a long time. Even if the demonic hall had already left for half an hour. She did not move either. In his mind, the scene of the conversation between the demon hall and that familiar and cold voice suddenly appeared. It was a voice that was so familiar that it penetrated deep into his bones. It was so familiar that she couldn't tell whether it was fake or not. The words of the demon hall had already made it very clear. She knew who she was. He knew about her relationship with Dmo Xian. That was why they were targeting her. However, how did the Devil Hall know about this? She was currently using the identity of Twilight Rain. Everything related to Yi Qing Luo had been sealed. Today, even Old Man Tsang and her war pet, as well as the vast water god weapon etc., were all unusable. And to such a stage. How could the Devil Hall recognize her? Most importantly, she and this so-called Devil Hall were totally not familiar with each other. How did the Devil Hall know about her relationship with Dmo Xian? Or did they know about her identity? This question could only wait till tomorrow's wedding ceremony to find out the answer. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5087. It was totally unrealistic to search for Dmo Xian in the Demonic Palace Castle now. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with the layout of the Demonic Palace Castle. Even if she was, there was no way she could roam around the demonic palace castle. Tomorrow, she would always be able to see Dmo Xian at the wedding ceremony. By then, she would know the reason. Yiqing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as she displayed her blink movement secret art and disappeared from the castle's main hall. She had just returned to Madame Huang Xi's courtyard. She just stepped in. Her wrist tightened. In the darkness, Madame Huang Xi's hand grabbed her arm tightly. "Are you all right?" Her eyes were filled with worry as she sized Yiqing Luo up. "You're awake." Yiqing Luo smiled at her and pulled her back into the house. "I'm fine, don't worry." "What happened?" Madame Huang Xi frowned. Her expression was extremely ugly. After the both of them sat on the chair, Yiqing Luo took Madame Huang Xi's pulse as she replied, "The demonic palace indeed knows the reason why I came to Devil Head City." Madame Huang Xi's pulse was very stable. The things that demonic palace planted didn't have much of an effect on Madame Huang Xi. Yiqing Luo was relieved. Based on Madame Huang Xi's current body, she really couldn't take on other kinds of poison. Madame Huang Xi allowed Yiqing Luo to take her pulse as her thoughts were fixed on Yiqing Luo's words. Her expression suddenly sunk, then. "Demonic palace wants to capture you. In case you spoil her wedding." Initially, he might have thought so. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers propped up her chin as her slightly curved eyes were filled with a cold glint, but not necessarily. That demonic palace wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. Demonic palace's target was her. It might not be because he was worried that she would spoil the wedding. Or possibly, he wanted to torture her. "Why not? Why not you go and hide first? When I see the Overlord, I'll help you pass on a message." Madame Huang Xi revealed a worried expression. That demonic palace's way of doing things. Extremely unreasonable. No one could guess what she was thinking. If demonic palace set his eyes on Evening Rain, then. If Twilight Rain continued to stay in the Demon Hall Castle, it would instead attract a fatal disaster. Yiqing Luo held Madame Huang Xi's hand gently as her long and narrow eyes were filled with a cold glint. "I came to Devil Head City to wreck the wedding ceremony's venue. How could I possibly dodge?" She softened her expression and smiled again. "Moreover, in the eyes of the Devil Hall, we are in the same group. Do you think, if I hide, she will give you the chance to meet the sovereign alone?" Moreover, it was still uncertain whether that person was a venerable sovereign. Yiqing Luo didn't believe it. Her Xian would appear at the wedding ceremony of another woman. He looked at Madame Huang Xi's worried face. Yiqing Luo comforted him, "Don't worry, I know how to protect myself." Seeing her insistence, Madame Huang Xi could only sigh lightly. "Don't force yourself." Yiqing Luo smiled and brought the topic back to the matter which she was suspicious of previously. The Devil Hall actually dared to act against her, the person protected by Madame Huang Xi, in the Devil Hall Castle. He even poisoned Madame Huang Xi, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. This action. It was totally provoking the Devil Phoenix continent. Madame Huang Xi's eyelids drooped slightly. That exquisite face was covered with a layer of faint melancholy. She pursed her lips slightly and sighed softly. Actually, there were signs of this long ago. "Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." "Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5088. As the lord of a continent, no matter how unwell she was, she would still be in control of most matters in the Devil region. A leader would absolutely not allow anything to be out of her control. Initially, the Devil region's 3 continents were in balance. Devil Head City was located in the center of the 3 continents, with Devil Hall as the leader. This was considered stable. But no one knew when it started. Over at Devil Hall's side, there were some changes. Unknowingly, all the powerhouses in the 3 continents were leaning towards Devil Hall. The powers of the 3 continents were well aware of this, but they couldn't point it out, so they could only investigate and counterattack in the dark. Following that, Devil Hall directly took away part of the authority in their hands. All the way till now. Huang Sifu's drooping brows were cold and gloomy. I always feel that this marriage ceremony is not a simple marriage. Yi Qing Luo agreed with this point. Devil Hall's actions tonight. They totally didn't consider if it would affect her marriage tomorrow. Even if Devil Hall's status was above the 3 continents' powers. But if Madame Huang Xi were to create a ruckus because of her being caught, no matter what, it would affect the marriage ceremony. Moreover, earlier, in Devil Hall's main hall, Devil Hall and DMO Xian's conversation. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that Devil Hall liked DMO Xian at all. This matter. There must be a problem. Rest early, tomorrow we will know. What is that Devil Hall planning? Yi Qing Luo patted Huang Xifu's shoulder. Rest enough before you have the energy. The next day. It was still not daybreak. The entire Devil Head city was a scene of jubilation. This liveliness continued till morning. Yi Qing Luo and Madame Huang Xi had their meal and were led by Devil Hall's attendants to the wedding ceremony venue. Along the way, Devil Hall's surroundings were totally different from when they came. Devil Hall's castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers, red silk hung everywhere. Big red, double happiness words were pasted on every wall and door. Yi Qing Luo and the rest followed the attendant out of Devil Hall's castle, and under the attendant's instructions, they boarded a magic ship. On top of the magic ship, there were already 5 to 6 people who were of high status and authority. When they saw Madame Huang Xi, they all stood up to greet her. Madame Huang Xi politely returned the greeting. Then, after exchanging a few pleasantries, they each took their own seats. The Demon Palace had set the wedding to be held at the largest square in Devil Head City. Under the recent management of the square, it was grand and luxurious, fully displaying the style of the Devil Hall. Countless citizens of the demon domain had gathered around and were watching with their heads raised. Their words were filled with joy for the marriage of the Demon Hall. They were even discussing the love story between the sovereign and the Demon Palace. His imagination was so good that he could write a 5 million-word novel. After the demonic ship arrived, beautiful maids came forward and led the people on the demonic ship to their seats. Yi Qing Luo had been looking around the entire way. The people of the infernal region looked no different from humans. The only difference was, regardless of whether they were men or women, young or old, they all wore thick eyeliner and had 4 sharp teeth in their mouths. Madame Huang Xi was the ruler of a continent. His position was naturally very close to the front. It was the 2nd row away from Xinrao. After Yi Qing Luo sat down, she sized up the people around her. Numerous strong practitioners from the infernal region were all invited over, as their faces were filled with smiles as they chatted with the people around them. Madame Huang Xi could roughly tell that Yi Qing Luo didn't know much about the matters of the infernal region. Chapter 5089. Occasionally he would lower his voice to explain to her the surrounding identities. The two of them were whispering something. The seat beside Yi Qing Luo was occupied by someone. Yi Qing Luo subconsciously looked over. He saw a man in a moon-white robe leaning lazily against the back of the chair in the distance of a pedestrian passageway. What made Yi Qing Luo astonished was that man's hair was silver in color. It was obviously the symbol of the purest white robe and white hair man, but he had a captivating face. That face was extraordinarily handsome, bewitching. Especially that pair of long and narrow, curved phoenix eyes, which carried a charm. When it was slightly raised, it hooked into a wavy arc. Unfortunately, such an evildoer's temperament, under the white robe and white hair, was totally compatible. Good looks really could handle any style. Every table here represented a powerhouse. Every table's fingertip was separated by a distance of a pedestrian walkway. Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's gaze was too scorching, without any concealment. That lazy and contented man suddenly raised his eyes, meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, as he looked over. Just like that, their eyes met. Yiqing Luo could feel her own heart constricting for a moment. He really was an evildoer. This face, this temperament. If it was any other lady, they would probably drown under his charm. The man was apparently curious. After their eyes met, the young lady actually continued to look at him without any change in expression. And there wasn't any shyness or any ripples in her emotions. The man's brows rose slightly, as he sized up the young lady with interest. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi tugged Yiqing Luo's hand hard. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted away, as she looked towards Madame Huang Xi. Huang Xifu's expression wasn't too good, as he suppressed his voice, that his devil wings countenance King Yi Zhou. She looked at the man's gaze towards Yiqing Luo, as her expression sunk, as she continued, I heard that he hates women, especially women, staring at his looks. There are rumors outside, that he might be a... Madame Huang Xi raised her arm, as she pulled down her wide sleeves. Cut off the sleeve. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced sideways at the man with interest, which was in the direction of Wing King Yi Zhou. Then, she retracted her gaze. TSK, such a good-looking man but he's gay, what a pity. Yiqing Luo whispered. Suddenly, a low and flirtatious voice came from behind him, like a peach blossom caressing his face. You, keep staring at this prince, what is your intention? It was unknown when Yi Zhou had walked to Yiqing Luo's side. A clear and serene male scent of green bamboo seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo had just turned back. She was met with an enlarged version of a handsome face that was right in front of her. Wing Nine bent down and looked down at the girl in front of him. Her face had the facial features of a cute girl next door. She could barely be considered elegant and pleasant. But, those eyes. It made people want to look into the abyss in her eyes and sink into it. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she looked at this close proximity, that charming face, as she opened her mouth. Can you stay further away from me? This distance, wasn't it a little too close? There were already quite a number of strong practitioners from the devil's domain looking over. Where was the disgusting woman? What was he doing standing so close to her? King Yi. When Madame Huang Xi saw this, she immediately stood up and called out. Chapter 5090. She raised her hand and used her wide sleeves to block Yiqing Luo's and Yi Wang's eyes. Yi Wang then shifted his gaze away. Madame Huang Xi's face sunk. Yi Wang, this is Dr. Rao. Yi Wang straightened his body lazily and sat down on the chair next to Yiqing Luo naturally. I didn't do anything, why is Madame so agitated? Huang Xifu replied indifferently, Wang Xi is not here. I and Madame haven't met for a long time, Madame can bear to chase me away. Yi Wang casually glanced at Madame Huang Xi and poured himself a cup of tea. Anyway, I came here alone, why don't I have a companion? Huang Xifu's face turned gloomy. She frowned. Yi Wang, Dr. Mu only took a few more glances at you because you are too good-looking. She is my Dr. Rao, if Yi Wang is angry, feel free to come to me. Yi Wang didn't seem to hear the impatience and coldness in Madame Huang Xi's words. Instead, his long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into an arc as he turned to Yiqing Luo and asked with a smile, Miss Mu really think I am handsome? Huang Xifu's face turned black. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. Looking at Yi Wang's smiling face, which looked even more like a beauty that could bring calamity to the country. She blinked her eyes again. This was a dead question. Based on Madame Huang Xi's image of Yi Wang. He hated other women to look at him. Maybe he felt that his face was a burden. So he couldn't admit it. But if he denied it, it would probably annoy Yi Wang. Yiqing Luo expressed that this question was hard to answer. So she asked back, then Yi Wang think. You look good. Good. Yi Wang didn't hesitate as his slender fingers touched his chin and the ends of his eyes lifted. Yiqing Luo felt that he was purposely exuding his male hormones. This Yi Wang was probably a stuffy horse flea. Yiqing Luo smiled and smiled again. Good looking. The King of Wings tilted his head, and his long silver hair cascaded down his shoulders. However, I feel that your answer is completely insincere, as if you were just brushing me off. Yiqing Luo. So she thought this was a suicide question. Yi King. Madame Huang Xi frowned. Madame is fine. Yiqing Luo held on to Madame Huang Xi, curled her lips and shook her head. Up until now, she had not sensed any malicious intent from the Wing King. According to her analysis, this was probably the first time Yi Wang had met a young lady like her. After seeing his beautiful face, she was still able to remain clear-headed under his seductive charm. Therefore, he was a little interested. Yiqing Luo expressed, what kind of peerless beauty had she not seen before? She had already devoured all the top beauties in the world, including her Xian. No matter how beautiful Yi Wang was, Wang couldn't do anything about it. Her heart wasn't moved at all, okay? And there was movement over here. Many of the guests around them were shocked. Those who could attend the wedding ceremony were either rich or noble. Who didn't know that the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was a person who detested women? But now, the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was actually sitting on Huang Xi Fu Rao's seat, and was even chatting cheerfully with a young lady. And they were so close. Could it be? The Devil Wing Continent and the Devil Phoenix Continent were going to unite by marriage. This thought instantly caused an uproar among the guests. All of them expressed their disbelief. Chapter 5091. He listened to the millions of words that the people around him once again filled in the gaps in their minds. Yiqing Luo was speechless. She didn't expect these people from the Devil region to have such a strong imagination. But Yiqing Luo didn't reject Yi Wang sitting beside her. He chatted back and forth with the King of Wings. On the other hand, Madame Huang Xi's eyes were filled with worry and vigilance as she stared at Yi Wang. There were more and more guests around. The scene of the wedding ceremony was getting more and more lively. King Yi's eyes were filled with interest as he stared at Yiqing Luo, the corners of his eyes raised as he smiled. The first time this duke saw Miss Mu, I was already filled with joy. I wonder if Miss Mu is willing to follow this duke back to the Devil Wings Continent, to be this duke's princess. Yiqing Luo. Madame Huang Xi was drinking tea when her hand shook and the teacup fell onto the rain. Yi Wang's words had shocked the both of them. On the contrary, Yi Wang didn't feel that his words had much influence on them. He was still smiling as he deliberately exuded his charm. What do you think, Miss Mu? Yiqing Luo placed the teacup on the table and fixed her gaze on Yi Wang. Yi Wang allowed her to size him up. Yiqing Luo stared for a while and was extremely calm. You like me? Yi Wang leaned forward slightly and closed the distance between him and Yiqing Luo. His long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. I find you very interesting. I just find it interesting, not to the extent of liking. On what basis do you want to marry me? Yiqing Luo rejected him directly. After you find me boring, won't you abandon me? Ha ha ha. Yi Wang laughed softly as his silver hair swayed in front of his chest. Miss Mu is indeed straightforward, making me fall in love with you. Yiqing Luo was expressionless. I forgot to tell Yi Wang something. Ha! Yi Wang raised his brows with interest. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. I am already married. Yi Wang's eyes widened slightly as he was somewhat surprised. But immediately after, he laughed in a low voice. So what? He casually picked up the teapot and filled the young lady's teacup before bringing the tea to Yi Qing Luo's lips. That green bamboo-like fragrance assaulted her senses. He approached her and chuckled. Even if we are married, if this king likes you, you can only be this king's. As he spoke, he handed the teacup over. Yi Qing Luo was about to raise her hand to block Yi Wang. However, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was just a short pause. The teacup in Yi Wang's hand was already at her lips. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and held the teacup as she looked towards the direction of that chilling intent. The seats were full of guests, but she didn't see that familiar yet bone-chilling aura. She didn't know where it came from. That chill. Someone must be watching her. Wing King, please behave yourself. Madame Huang Xi waved her hand and separated the distance between Yi Qing Luo and Yi Wang, then pulled her behind her. No matter what motive you have, Dr. Mu is not someone you can play with. The corners of King Yi's lips curled upwards. She lowered her gaze and focused on her own hand. That was the hand that the girl had grabbed just now. She snatched the cup from his hand and let go of him. However, he still felt that the touch of her hand was still faintly lingering. Yi Wang lifted his eyes slightly. His narrow phoenix eyes revealed some unknown glint. He looked at Madame Huang Xi and smiled faintly. Perhaps, this king does not intend to play with her. Then I will still reject. This sentence was Yi Qing Luo's reply. Chapter 5092. While smashing, 5, the title is wrong. Yi Qing Luo placed the teacup on the table. I am already married and I love my husband very much, so it's not your turn to please me. Wing 9, who had been completely rejected, smiled even more brightly. He shifted his body and slumped back onto the chair as his gaze casually looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, squinting in that direction, and with an unclear meaning, his thin lips curled upwards. I didn't expect Miss Mu to have so many pursuers. Yi Qing Luo. What did he mean? Yi Jiu didn't have the intention to explain to her as he sat by the side and poured himself a cup of tea. Then he stared ahead at the stage where the newlyweds were going to bow to heaven and earth. It wasn't the auspicious hour yet. The two newlyweds hadn't come out yet. Yi Qing Luo didn't talk to Yi Jiu anymore. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qing Luo's hand and asked in a low voice, "You are really married?" Yi Qing Luo smiled and nodded. Madame Huang Xi looked towards the stage and coughed lightly. Could it be the Overlord? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows and smiled mysteriously. This. I'm not sure. Maybe her husband was really the groom today. Or maybe not. Madame Huang Xi was stunned. Yes means yes, no means no. What did she mean by not sure? She couldn't even say for sure who her husband was. Madame Huang Xi felt that the marriage mentioned by Mu Yu was just an excuse to reject Yi Zhou. As she spoke, the festive gongs and drums sounded. Accompanied by the wedding matron's joyous voice, the auspicious hour has arrived, may the bride and groom please come to the stage. At that moment, the entire wedding ceremony was filled with deafening applause and congratulations. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then she raised her eyes and followed the gaze of these people to the flower carpet that extended to the door. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qing Luo's hand tightly and whispered worriedly. Worried that she wouldn't be able to bear it. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled but didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the door without blinking. Two figures slowly appeared and stepped onto the carpet of flowers on the ground. The woman wore a phoenix crown and red robe, and her face was as red as fire. The man was dressed in a bright red wedding robe and was extraordinarily handsome. When the two of them appeared in front of everyone, thunderous applause erupted from the crowd. Tight and loose, the petals spread. The bride and groom held a red ribbon in their hands and walked step by step towards the stage. Everywhere he went, there were words of congratulations. Yiqing Luo's vision congealed on that pair of newlyweds, not even blinking once, not even blinking once. The man was handsome and elegant, but his face was expressionless at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face. That face. Even if Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, she could still accurately recognize him. She was so familiar with the man in her bones. Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo looked on expressionlessly, looking. There was not the slightest change in his expression or any change in his emotions. But Madame Huang Xi, who was holding hands with her, could clearly feel the strength of the young lady's clenched fists. Her heart ached. But at this time, he couldn't open his mouth to comfort her. She could only let the young girl hold her hand, giving the girl the only warmth. The bride and groom walked past them. They were very close to each other. The moment the newcomer passed by, the groom's vision brushed past Yiqing Luo. Obviously, his footsteps paused. His four eyes met with Yiqing Luo's. That pair of deep and serene eyes seemed to be surging with raging waves. Beside him, the bride tugged at the red ribbon and said something in a low voice. The groom shifted his vision away and walked forward expressionlessly. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5093. The bride and groom were standing in the middle of the stage, facing the guests. The matchmaker was still speaking joyous words. Madame Huang Xi stood beside Yiqing Luo and naturally saw the groom's gaze when he stopped in his tracks and looked at Yiqing Luo. Her heart thumped as she gripped Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly and asked in a low voice, "Between you and the Overlord, is it really?" Earlier, the groom had obviously taken a look at Mu Yu. That slightly startled expression seemed to hide endless words. Seems. Yes. The young lady's expression didn't change much as she casually retracted her gaze from the pair of newlyweds and looked at Madame Huang Xi with a sweet smile, looking at him wearing this wedding robe. I'm a little stunned. Madame Huang Xi's heart was pounding. She couldn't tell if the young lady was suppressing the pain in her heart or if she really didn't care. She deliberated over her words before saying, could it be that he has some difficulties? Or, I'll find a chance to let the both of you have a private talk. Yiqing Luo thought about it seriously as she tilted her head slightly and smiled. No need, he will naturally come and look for me. At this moment, Madame Huang Xi really couldn't understand what the young lady in front of her was thinking about. She could tell. Mu Yu's feelings for the Overlord was so deep. She came all the way to the Devil's Domain just to look for the Overlord. But she witnessed the scene of the man she loved deeply marrying another lady with her own eyes. If it had been her, she would have been shocked. She might break down. But unfortunately, the young lady in front of her had a calm expression and her pink lips were still slightly curled up. Madame Huang Xi was really worried if Mu Yu would suffocate herself to death. TSK. Seems like there's a good show to watch. A frivolous voice rang from the side. Yijiu propped up his head as he looked at Yiqing Luo with a smile. Miss Mu, your marriage partner, don't tell me. Today's groom. Earlier when the groom stopped in his tracks and exchanged glances with the young lady, although it wasn't obvious, but those who had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo were still able to sense it. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as her long and narrow eyes flowed with a sly smile, then. If I want to ruin today's marriage ceremony, will Duke Yi help me? The girl's tone was soft, but her words were very bold and arrogant. There wasn't much emotion in her eyes as she slowly sat back down. Yi Wang stared straight at Yi Qingluo, as though he wanted to see through her, straight into her soul. What? Yi Wang doesn't dare anymore. Yi Qingluo smiled wickedly. Nine Wing's tone was filled with an ambiguous sense of ridicule as he raised his eyebrows and looked at Yi Qingluo. Miss Mu, what's the use of having a man who abandoned you? Why don't you become my princess? That way, he will be angered to death. Yi Qingluo laughed softly. Yi Wang's idea sounds pretty good. That's right, so what's Miss Mu's answer? Yi Wang suddenly straightened his body as that handsome face leaned towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Between her brows, there was a devilish charm. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in you, Yi Wang. The young lady spat out her words indifferently as she rejected him in a straightforward manner. What's more, I have nothing to do with today's groom. Yi Wang, don't ruin my reputation, in case the Lord Devil Hall comes looking for me to settle the score. Yi Wang gave a faint "oh," as he replied with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Nothing to do with you. But I feel that your relationship is not shallow. Chapter 5094. What you think is your problem, it has nothing to do with me. Yi Qingluo's smile faded as she raised her slender hand and pushed him back to his seat. Following that, she shifted her vision towards the center of the stage. The newlyweds were standing there, going through all kinds of wedding procedures. Looking at the groom, holding the red silk and bowing to the wedding matron's joyous voice. Yi Qingluo expressed, there was no fluctuation in her heart, she even felt like laughing. That groom was indeed Dmo Xian's face. His every action was filled with Dmo Xian's shadow. But it wasn't Dmo Xian. Yi Qingluo didn't know how to describe this feeling. Anyway, it was just the first look and she was already certain, he wasn't Xian. Even if this groom looked like Dmo Xian. Even if he revealed an expression when he saw her. She was certain, this person was absolutely not Dmo Xian. Perhaps, this kind of stubborn thinking, in the eyes of outsiders, might be seen as self-deception. Yi Qingluo gave a low laugh as she lowered her eyes to look at the profound phoenix ring on her fingertips. To conceal her identity, it had covered the original glow, making it look extremely dim. There was no fluctuation in the profound phoenix ring. Her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring as her mind was filled with thoughts. If the groom in front of her wasn't Dmo Xian, then what was the intention of the demonic palace? This was also clear, the demonic palace knew that Dmo Xian was in the devil's domain. Most importantly, earlier the groom looked at her, what did it mean? Her current identity was Sunset Rain. Yi Qingluo's mind was sketching out the development of the matter, attempting to deduce the demonic palace's motive. And the way she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. In Huang Sifu's eyes, it meant that she was in low spirits and not in a good mood. He didn't want to disturb her, so he could only look at her with heartache. Just as she was thinking. The procedures had ended. It was time for the couple to toast. Yi Qingluo's elbow was knocked. From the side of his eyes met the bride's exquisitely made-up, cold and elegant face. Not knowing when, the demonic palace had already removed the red veil, pulling the groom to stand in front of her. The demon royal highness held a wine cup in her hand. A lazy smile appeared on her cold, picturesque eyes. Last night, didn't Madam want me to introduce you to the sovereign? I've brought Dizun here for you. Madam Huang Xi stood up and raised her wine cup. There was no smile on her face. Congratulations to Lord Demon Hall for getting married to Lord Dizun. She was about to finish the wine in one gulp. A white hand pressed down on her hand. Madam is currently recuperating and isn't suitable to drink alcohol. This cup of wine. If Sir Demon Lord doesn't mind, I'll drink it on her behalf. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly at Demon Lord. Devil Palace's brows shot towards Yiqing Luo as that pair of beautiful eyes bore an undetectable cold intent. After that, he said, Madam, you still have to protect the Demon Phoenix continent. Your health is more important, it's fine. Yiqing Luo's fingertips flicked as she took the wine cup from Madame Huang Xi's hands. After finishing it in one gulp, she smiled, it's a marriage, as long as you're happy. Congratulations to the both of you. Devil Palace didn't have the intention to head to the next table to toast. Instead, he held on to the groom's arm. Di Zun heard that a divine doctor had appeared by Madame's side and had always wanted to meet you. Although I'm not too willing to let Di Zun befriend such a beautiful lady like Dr. Mu, but I can't reject Di Zun's request. Chapter 5095. The bridegroom's handsome face immediately darkened a little. His black eyes, which were as deep as ink, swept across the demon hall coldly. As though he was warning something. As though he was suppressing his anger because of Demon Palace's words. Demon Palace's smile was even more enchanting, her cold beautiful eyes were cold. See, didn't I let you meet each other? Her words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Or as though it was because the groom wanted to befriend this divine doctor. As the bride, she unconditionally fulfilled her husband's wish. The groom held the wine glass as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. The raging waves in his eyes seemed to want to drown her. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Yiqing Luo didn't seem to see his rich expression as she smiled sweetly. Since Demon Palace doesn't allow it, then there's no need to get to know each other. She raised her wine glass and clinked it against the groom's glass. Anyway, I will only be by Madame's side and be her exclusive doctor. Other people's illnesses have nothing to do with me. After that, she raised her wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Her smile was flawless. Congratulations, groom. The groom looked at the wine glass in his hand as his throat rolled. That familiar low hoarse voice, indeed, it was very similar. Even that tone seemed to be replicated. But there was only that one word. Demon Palace took a look at him. In the end, he swallowed the words that were stuck in his throat and silently drained the cup of wine. Demon Palace looked at Madame Huang Xi with envy. This Dr. Madame has found is really enviable. Madame Huang Xi's lips twitched as she forced a smile. Now that Demon Palace is married to the Overlord, based on the Overlord's great ability, he will definitely not let you need a doctor. Demon Palace gave another enchanting smile. Then she held the groom's arm and went to the other tables to toast. This side finally quietened down. Looking at the young lady's calm look, Madame Huang Xi's heart ached more and more. Yi Jiu opened his mouth and said lazily, Demon Palace obviously dragged her groom to you, don't tell me. Demon Palace already knew that you are here to snatch the bride. It looks like he knows. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smiled. Aren't you afraid that the Devil Hall would think that we're in cahoots by sitting together with me? If you become this king's consort, this king will naturally be on your side. Yi Jiu once again brought up this matter. Yiqing Luo maintained her smile. King Yi is really persistent. Maybe if you're a little more persistent, you'll be able to win the heart of the beauty. Wing Nine's smile remained unchanged. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly, it still lit up. Wing Nine, huh? It's not time to dream yet. Yiqing Luo was expressionless. Yi Jiu was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. That smile could only be described as amorous and flirtatious. It was demonic to the extreme. When Madame Huang Xi saw the conversation between the two of them, she wanted to stop Yi Jiu, but she suddenly stopped. The current sunset rain was probably feeling terrible in her heart. With Yi Wang accompanying her like this, perhaps it could divert his attention. Madame Huang Xi let out a long sigh. Suddenly, they keenly sensed that there were several pairs of eyes looking in their direction. When Madame Huang Xi looked over, she saw that although Demon Palace and the groom were toasting, their gazes were always looking in their direction. Especially when she saw Sunset Rain and Yi Wang chatting happily, she even whispered something. Chapter 5096. Madame Huang Xi's heart was suddenly in her throat. The Demon Lord and the Overlord. It seemed that the attention they paid to Evening Rain was unusual. Was it because they were worried that Evening Rain would cause trouble and kidnap the bride? Madame Huang Xi suppressed her thoughts and refocused her attention on the ceremony. It took at least an hour for the toasts to be completed. When the couple returned to the stage, they were already a little tipsy. The Demon Lord leaned on the groom's shoulder, his little hand hooked his arm, but his cold face was hooked into a smile. The groom was still expressionless, letting the Demon Lord do whatever he wanted. The matchmaker said a few more words. After that, the guests were allowed to eat and drink as they liked. Miss Mu. Ijo suddenly lowered his voice and gave her a bright smile. Do you want to know who is the person who has been staring at you from behind? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. You found him. From the moment she and Ijo started talking, she kept feeling a cold gaze directed at her. That frosty gaze, but she couldn't catch it at all. Whether he was a friend or foe, she didn't know. Yiqing Luo felt that since she came to the devil's domain, she felt that she was on the verge of losing her horse. Like everyone had a grudge against her. She also wanted to know who was the person who had been staring at her coldly. Listening to Yiqing Luo's inquiry, Ijo shook his head with a smile. No. Yiqing Luo. What the hell are you talking about? But, I have an idea. Ijo's long and narrow phoenix eyes twitched. Do you want to try? Yiqing Luo didn't reply. Madame Huang Xi continued, if there is an idea, why don't we try? It's better than them hiding in the dark while we are out in the open. Madame Huang Xi's action was to divert Yiqing Luo's attention, so that she wouldn't be affected by the marriage between the Demon Lord and the Overlord. What's more, indeed, if there was someone staring at Evening Rain in the dark, it would be safer to put them out in the open. Ijo raised his brows, his slender fingers stroked his chin. I have observed for a while, once I get close to you, that gaze will move over. So, I guess. He paused mysteriously and said, come out with me. Yiqing Luo sized him up suspiciously. What do you want to do? You are Madame's person, this duke wouldn't dare to do anything bad. Ijo grabbed Yiqing Luo's wrist through her sleeves and pulled her out of the crowd. It was a boiling cauldron of voices and the seats were full of guests. Their actions did not attract the attention of too many people. However, the pair of newlyweds on the stage could see it clearly. There was a momentary change in the expression on the groom's handsome face. His deep eyes stared straight at the departing figures of Yiqing Luo and Ijo. After a while, he lowered his eyes. I'm going to sober up. The Demon Royal Hall smiled mysteriously and pretended to be considerate. Go. Madame Huang Xi's beautiful eyes were filled with worry and she wanted to catch up. But the moment he stood up, the Demon Hall glanced in a certain direction. Soon, people from other continents came up to chat. In the blink of an eye, Ijo and Yiqing Luo's figures had already disappeared before their eyes. The entire square was contracted by the Demon Royal Hall. Walking out of the wedding stage, the periphery was decorated with flowers like a brocade, the atmosphere was joyous, luxurious, and noble. Until they walked out of the crowd, Yiqing Luo shook off Ijo. Is this enough? Ijo raised his brows and looked around. Chapter 5097. Everyone had gathered at the scene of the wedding ceremony to watch the ceremony. Among the flowers, there was no one else to be seen. Ichio's long and narrow phoenix eyes were flowing with a few rays of bright light, extremely evil. His thin lips curled and suddenly reached out and pressed on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Immediately, his figure leaned forward. That devilishly handsome face was magnified in Yiqing Luo's pupils. Yiqing Luo was stunned for a moment. She didn't quite understand the intention of Ichio's action. But she didn't show too much panic on her face, just raised her hand to block Ichio's chest, blocking him from getting close. It was also at this moment. Yiqing Luo's wrist was pulled by a huge force. With a little force, she staggered back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. Just as she was about to turn her head to look, Ichio suddenly grabbed her arm hard and pulled her towards him. Yiqing Luo, each of them pulled one arm. Was this a tug of war? Your Majesty, today is your big day. You came here, and pulled my future wife. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Ichio spat out a voice laced with evil laughter. He smiled with his phoenix eyes, looking behind Yiqing Luo with a faint smile. Overlord. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly. She glanced sideways, and sure enough, her eyes met that peerless face. And that pair of eyes that seemed to be full of infinite affection, as deep as ink. He held her wrist tightly, a little strong, as if he was holding back some emotions. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Immediately, her pink lips raised into a faint smile. Groom, what do you mean? She looked down at her wrist. The groom tightly pursed his thin lips, his eyes were surging with stormy waves. He held Yiqing Luo's hand and refused to let go. Yiqing Luo tried to shake it off but failed, her expression turned solemn. Bridegroom, please conduct yourself with dignity. You, listen to my explanation. He spoke in a low and hoarse voice, word by word, with difficulty. Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter as a trace of puzzlement and solemnity surfaced in her eyes. Bridegroom, what do you mean by this? You and I don't know each other at all. If you do this, will you be able to face the Lord of the Devil Palace? Little Luo, he called out in a low voice. That familiar voice that made one's heart tremble, calling out Dmo Xian's exclusive title. Yiqing Luo's heart was still moved. However, on the surface, he frowned even tighter. Groom, I think you have recognized the wrong person. How could I be mistaken? The groom's voice was hoarse and full of pain. Give me a chance to explain. Before he could finish, Ichio's hand suddenly reached over and pushed the groom's hand away. The bridegroom's eyes immediately shot out a sharp, cold glint toward Ichio. Ichio casually pulled Yiqing Luo to his side as he nonchalantly pulled the corners of his lips. Overlord, Miss Mu already said that she doesn't know you. Isn't it a little too much for you to keep pestering her? Don't forget, you're the new husband of today's wedding ceremony. Ichio deliberately emphasized on the last three words. Is it your turn to speak? The groom's voice was deep and cold as he reached out to grab Yiqing Luo's arm again. This lord is talking to her. What has it got to do with you? This lord said that she is this lord's future princess consort, you say. This lord has nothing to do with this lord. Ichio moved forward and blocked the groom's outstretched hand. He laughed so much that he deserved a spanking. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5098. The peerless groom's expression turned darker and gloomier. His eyes that were as cold as ink stared at Yiqing Luo. What he said. Is it true? Whether what King Yi said is true or false has nothing to do with you. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to explain. If she explained, didn't it mean that she cared about the other party's opinion? she didn't want the other party to have such a misconception. The girl's face was cold, and there was not much emotion on her face. Even the look in her eyes did not change in the slightest. "Groom, today is your big day. You are not afraid of getting into trouble, but I don't want to get into trouble for no reason. Earlier Lord Demonic Palace had already made it very clear that she doesn't want us to have too much relationship. Earlier, I will take it that you've recognized the wrong person, please conduct yourself with dignity." The young lady's voice was soft, but the words that came out were like a sharp blade, cutting off a deep ravine. The groom seemed to have lost all his strength, even that pair of obsidian black eyes had lost its luster at this moment. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I know, you're angry because of my marriage with her, but you should believe me." He suddenly raised his head and stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo. "You should believe me." "Groom, what are you talking about?" Yi Qing Luo vividly acted out her confusion, helplessness, impatience and anger. "Why should I be angry because of your marriage? Why should I believe you?" She frowned. "If you've recognized the wrong person, then your actions are letting down Lord Demonic Palace." Saying that, she turned around and left. Not willing to stay for a moment. Yi Jiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the groom with some interest in his eyes. Then he chased after Yi Qing Luo. The two of them had only taken a few steps. A man's mellow and hoarse voice was heard from behind, full of emotions. He said, "I'm sorry." But the person in front had no intention of stopping. Vaguely, she could hear Yi Jiu teasing, "Oh, Miss Mu is not bad. I didn't expect you and the Overlord to have a past. Go over my ass. I don't even know who he is. Who knows if that bridegroom is sick in the head." The young girl's tone was full of impatience. "But I feel that he seems very sincere," Yi Jiu said. Hee. The young girl coldly snorted, "Pulling another woman on your wedding day, you're simply a scum among men. How sincere could such a person be?" Bah, the voice gradually grew distant. The expression on the man's face, which was filled with disappointment, gradually calmed down. His ink-like deep eyes stared straight in the direction where the girl had left. That peerless face was covered with a layer of dark and gloomy emotion. Until he was far away from the cluster of flowers. He was sure that the groom had not caught up. Yi Qing Luo sneered as she glanced at Yi Jiu. "This is the good idea you came up with. So, the person in the dark is today's groom." Yi Jiu's face was full of seriousness. "This is not my deduction wrong, but Miss Mu, you are too popular. Even today's groom fell in love with you at first sight." Yi Qing Luo. If this sentence is heard by others, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave the wedding ceremony alive today. Yi Jiu's smile was bright, his extremely devilish face was handsome and evil. Once again, he approached her and smiled. "This time, it won't be wrong. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5099. Yi Qing Luo had yet to understand the meaning of Yi Jiu's words. Yi Jiu tightened his grip on her wrist. Then, he leaned towards Wing 9. Yi Qing Luo. Motherf asterisk Ker. Was he trying to take advantage of her? Yi Qing Luo gave him a backhand slap. This slap didn't even reach Wing 9's face. A majestic profound energy brushed past her and shot straight ahead. Bang! Wing 9 was sent flying. A moon-white long robe flashed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes and fell heavily on the rain. The next moment, Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightened. Suddenly, a cold sensation came into contact with him. Her whole body was pulled backwards. The familiar plum fragrance entered his nose. Yi Qing Luo was able to differentiate who the person who was pulling her was. She frowned and turned to look at the person behind her. He was dressed in a simple yet luxurious red robe, and a blood-colored jade pendant hung from his waist. It was as if there were wisps of blood rippling within the jade. His black hair was combed neatly, revealing his grave and stern face. His face was expressionless, devoid of any emotion. But that pair of serene eyes, when looking at Yiqing Luo, revealed some gentleness. It was Zhu Wuxin. Why was he here? No matter how she felt, it didn't matter what realm she was in. He could even meet Zhu Wuxin. Most importantly, her current identity was Mu Yu, so how did Zhu Wuxin recognize her? Yiqing Luo straightened her face and said with a sunken face, "Master, please let go." Her tone was calm, but there was a hint of vigilance in it. It was like meeting Zhu Wuxin for the first time. When that soft voice rang out, Zhu Wuxin frowned for a moment. However, the emotions on his face did not linger for long. It was fleeting. Yiqing Luo struggled free from Zhu Wuxian's hand as she retreated 2 steps in alarm as her brows creased slightly. "Who are you? Why did you suddenly attack King Yi?" The unfamiliarity in her eyes caused Zhu Wuxin to frown again. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with probing. Apparently, Zhu Wuxian wasn't certain that she was Yiqing Luo. This man was so sharp that it was scary. She had already disguised herself to this extent. He had disguised himself like this. Zhu Wuxin was actually able to recognize her. This was truly frightening. Yiqing Luo walked step by step towards Yi Wang's direction, as she looked at Zhu Wuxian alertly. Wing 9, who was lying on the ground, supported himself with one hand and slowly straightened his body. The moon-white robe swept across the ground, staining the flower petals on the ground. That head of silver hair, sprinkled on the beautiful purple and red jing. This added to his soul-stirring demonic charm. He stood up absent-mindedly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his slender fingers. Tilting his head, he raised his eyes to look at Zhu Wuxin and indifferently said, "He's the pavilion master of the Red Clarity Pavilion, Zhu Wuxin. You don't know him?" These words were to explain Zhu Wuxian's identity to Yiqing Luo and also to ask her. Yiqing Luo shook her head, "I don't know." Pausing for a moment, he asked again, "Are you 2 enemies? Why did he attack you the moment he arrived?" Wing 9 squinted that pair of cold phoenix eyes meaningfully as he gave an evil smile. "Why do I feel that, Pavilion Master Chu? Attacked me because of you. Because of me." Yiqing Luo frowned as her face was filled with puzzlement. Wing 9's vision went back and forth between the 2 of them as he spoke in a teasing tone, "Miss Mu. Looks like you really have many secrets on you which makes one want to investigate." Chapter 5100. That gaze which seemed as though he had seen his prey made Yiqing Luo frown in displeasure. Yi Jiu slowly shifted his gaze onto Zhu Wuxian as he gave an evil smile. "Pavilion Master Chu, could it be that you've also taken a fancy to Miss Mu?" What did he mean by, "you too"? Yiqing Luo really wanted to smash Yi Jiu's head. As though she was the one who attracted bees and butterflies everywhere. Zhu Wuxian didn't answer Yi Jiu's question as his gaze fell onto Yiqing Luo as his deep gaze probed her identity. But his words were directed at Yi Jiu. What's the relationship between Yi Jiu and her? Yi Jiu pondered seriously for a moment before giving an answer. Consider it as, this lord wants her to be this lord's future princess consort, this kind of relationship. Yiqing Luo. Zhu Wuxian's gaze turned slightly cold. His thin lips moved slightly as he spoke calmly. "Then, you won't have this chance." "Why?" Yi Jiu raised his brows with a smile yet not a smile. "Could it be that Pavilion Master Chu also wants Miss Mu to become your future pavilion mistress?" Zhu Wuxian had no intention to reply. He stared at Yiqing Luo as his voice was calm. "You really don't know me." That gaze seemed to have seen through Yiqing Luo's disguise. Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. But her face maintained a sense of unfamiliarity and vigilance with some puzzlement. She said, "Pavilion Master Chu. You and I have never met before today and I've never heard of your name, so how would you talk about knowing each other?" Zhu Wuxian's pupils contracted slightly as he turned around and left without saying a word. Yi Qing Luo. So, did he believe her or not? TSK TSK TSK. Yi Jiu propped his chin as he sized Yi Qing Luo up curiously. "Miss Mu, you're really popular. First there's the Overlord, and now there's Hongqing Pavilion's Pavilion Master. Just be direct, who else has fallen under your skirt?" Yi Qing Luo. She felt that she was on the verge of falling off the horse. But before there was any evidence, she would never admit it. Yi Jiu saw Yi Qing Luo ignoring him and walked over to her side. "Why? You're still counting how many love rivals this king has?" Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him and couldn't be bothered to reply to his teasing words. She asked directly, "So? The person who had been staring at me from the start and attacking me with various gazes, was this Pavilion Master Chu?" "It's obvious." Wing Nine spread his arms and smiled lazily. Yi Qing Luo chuckled. "How do you know that you can use this method to lure him out?" "Because this king is a man." Wing Nine smiled mysteriously. "Well, this king's method is still very successful. 2 lovers are drawn out in one go." Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes once again as she didn't want to bother with him anymore. Most importantly, she also did not know how to explain the strange attitude of the groom and Zhu Wuxin towards her. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him as she directly walked towards the wedding ceremony. Wing Nine caught up to him. "Do you still want to go back and watch your old Qing marry another woman? Madam is still there." Yi Qing Luo replied and added another sentence very seriously. "That's not some old Qing Ren. Yi Wang, please be careful with your words." She had just returned to the wedding ceremony. Yi Qing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi, who was surrounded by numerous people. A group of people were pulling her along as they chatted, as though their relationship was extremely good. Madame Huang Xi tried to leave several times but was stopped. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yi Qing Luo returning. Chapter 5101. Fortunately, Sunset Rain was safe and sound. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly when she saw the crowd surrounding Madame Huang Xi. She squeezed into the crowd and with a protective stance, she pulled Madame Huang Xi behind her. "I'm sorry everyone, please keep the air fresh." She protected Madame Huang Xi. Her delicate face was clear and her voice was soft as she explained, "I am Fu Rao's accompanying doctor. Fu Rao is not feeling well and should not drink." She casually picked up a glass of wine beside her and raised it to the crowd. "Thank you for your hospitality." After that, she drank it in one gulp. Her lips curled up and she smiled sweetly. The crowd didn't make things difficult for her. They had heard that Demon Phoenix Continent's Fu Rao had a problem with his health. But they didn't expect that it had reached the point where he needed an accompanying doctor. Their original intention was to keep Madame Huang Xi at the wedding venue. Now, Madame Huang Xi had no intention to leave. The crowd said a few words of concern and dispersed. Yi Qing Luo helped Madame Huang Xi back to her seat. "If you don't want to entertain, you can reject." Madame Huang Xi sized up Yi Qing Luo. "Are you all right? Where did Yi Wang bring you? Did he do anything to you?" "No." Yi Qing Luo smiled and shook her head in relief. "He's just saying it casually, but he's still a gentleman and won't really do anything to me." "So, in Miss Mu's heart, this lord's image is so high." E9's sloppy voice came from behind. E9 swayed his outstanding figure and swayed in front of Yi Qing Luo, with a devilish smile. He turned around gracefully and brushed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes as he sat sideways on the chair beside her. After that, He put one hand on the back of the chair behind her shoulder. His posture was full of intimacy. But, how can Miss Moo be sure that this lord is just saying it casually and not sincere? The fragrance of green bamboo lingered around. Yi Qing Luo raised her head expressionlessly and looked at E9, because, Yi Wang doesn't like me. If he doesn't like you, why would this lord let you be my future princess? E9 laughed. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and clasped Yi Jiu's wrist, then slowly moved his hand away from his back, until his breath was far away from her. Yi Qing Luo then calmly opened her mouth. You will have to ask King Yi, what motive do you have? After putting some distance between her and Yi Jiu, she casually leaned against the back of the chair. She raised her long and narrow eyes and looked at Yi Jiu with a faint smile. King Yi, my eyes don't lie. She raised a white and slender hand and brushed Yi Jiu's eyes through the air. When you look at me with those eyes of yours, I don't feel any affection at all. The smile on Wing Nine's face gradually froze. His deep eyes were fixated on the young girl. After a long time, he suddenly laughed. Miss Moo, no matter what kind of feelings this prince has for you, if this prince wants to marry you, then this prince is serious. Ha! Yi Qing Luo gave a light chuckle. I have a husband who loves me, so why would Duke Yi feel that I would abandon a man who loves me deeply, and choose a man like you, whose feelings for me are unclear? Yi Qing Luo propped up her chin. So, King Yi, if you want to get something from me, or if you have other motives, I advise you to give up. Because, I am something that you will never be able to, father. Cough, of course our Luo, can't do that. Chapter 5102. Fairy. That's right. This baby is a fairy, this fairy. Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change as she said the last two words. Yi Jiu was stunned at first, but when he realized the meaning of Yi Qing Luo's words, he gave a charming smile. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about him, but turned her head to talk to Madame Huang Xi. Madame Huang Xi didn't know what happened between the two of them outside, but she could tell that the relationship between the two had become slightly closer. She was a little worried. But in the end, there was nothing. After confirming that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian, Yi Qing Luo had no intention to crash the wedding. So, the wedding went smoothly. But, Yi Qing Luo felt that this wedding shouldn't end like this. From the groom's appearance to when he led the demon palace to the ceremonial stage, she was slightly stunned. Until the toast, the demon palace's words and the groom's expression. Until the end when he looked for her, with a face full of guilt, as if he was hiding endless difficulties. She could almost conclude. This bridegroom was probably here for her. No, to be more precise, he was here for Yi Qing Luo. The person behind the groom was probably already suspicious of her current identity. So he deliberately used the groom to provoke her. If she showed a trace of being moved by the groom, or make a move to crash the wedding, to snatch the bride, that was to directly strip her of her disguise. The person behind the scenes, was it the demon palace or someone else? Most importantly, how did the other party know that she was Yi Qing Luo? But the groom's probing. She should have performed well. After all, she knew that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian. The only fluctuation in her heart, probably seeing Dmo Xian's handsome appearance in the wedding robe. After all, the other party was wearing Dmo Xian's face. If the real purpose of this wedding was just to draw her out, then, this wedding, it would never progress so smoothly. Yi Qing Luo was in her mind, connecting all the things together. She was still thinking. Suddenly, there was a sound coming from the ceremonial stage. Following that, she heard someone shouting, "Overlord." Yi Qing Luo regained her senses from the calculations in her mind. Just as he looked over, Then, she saw a man dressed in a red wedding robe, striding in her direction. It was extremely fast. Everywhere it passed, a shapeless profound ripple was formed, and it pushed all the people that were in its way to the side. The red wedding robe was like a ripple spreading out. Yi Qing Luo. What the hell, what kind of situation was this? What was he trying to do by walking towards her? Yi Qing Luo subconsciously wanted to stand up to avoid the groom's attack. Before he could move. The groom was already standing in front of Yi Qing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. This lord will not marry her. He stared at Yi Qing Luo word by word, as though it was difficult and filled with suffering. Even that low and hoarse voice had a tinge of bitterness in it. I'm not marrying her anymore. Don't deny me, okay? Yi Qing Luo, what the hell was going on? What did the bridegroom mean? Yi Qing Luo wanted to struggle free from the groom's hand. But the groom held it even tighter. I know I'm wrong. Overlord, what do you mean by this? Just as everyone was stunned by this scene, the demon palace started her performance. Her cold and elegant face was filled with anger. Chapter 5103. Following that, he dragged his phoenix coronet and robe as he walked over in big strides. This angry shout. It also shocked the crowd. Instantly, the guests who came to watch the ceremony looked towards the groom and Yi Qing Luo as they started to discuss. Madame Huang Xi was stunned by this scene. She immediately stood up and stretched out her hand to push away the groom's hand which was holding Yi Qing Luo's. Before she got near, the groom waved his sleeves and a surge of boundless profound energy pushed her to one side. He raised his eyes that were as deep as the abyss and stared at Madame Huang Xi with a frosty gaze. On account of her, I will forgive your rudeness. You have no right to speak here. Madame Huang Xi staggered a few steps from the push and only managed to stabilize herself by holding on to the table. Following that, the groom turned his head to look at Yi Qing Luo and the expression on his face instantly changed. That pair of inky black eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness. Overlord. Under the crowd's discussion, the young lady's voice wasn't loud but it was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Yi Qing Luo totally couldn't guess what this impostor was trying to do. She could only maintain her persona as her face was filled with anger and impatience. What on earth are you trying to do? I regret it. The groom suppressed his voice as he spoke in an apologetic tone. I shouldn't make such a choice. What has your regret got to do with me? Yi Qing Luo looked at the devil hall which was getting nearer and nearer as she spoke even faster. Overlord, you and I don't know each other. If you regret, or if you should do anything, that's between you and the devil hall. She paused and continued, if it's because you don't want to get married to Demonic Hall and regret at the last minute, so you casually captured me in an attempt to end this wedding, then forgive me for not being able to help. It's a fact that you're getting married to Demonic Hall and there's no leeway to regret. Most importantly, I'm a married woman. When the young lady said the last 4 words, her narrow eyes rose. I can't let anyone spoil my reputation and let others misunderstand that there's some unclear relationship between us. So, Overlord, please find someone else. I'm not getting married. The groom stubbornly repeated. His grip on Yi Qing Luo's wrist increased in strength. That pair of deep black eyes were also filled with determination. Come with me, I will explain everything to you. Yi Qing Luo was in so much pain that her brows creased tightly and her forehead wrinkled. At this moment, Yi Jiu suddenly pressed on the groom's hand and directly pried his hand open, saving Yi Qing Luo. He looked sloppily at the groom's deep eyes and sneered, Lord Dizun, don't you understand? Whether you get married or not has nothing to do with Lady Mu. The groom's gaze turned cold, and it was as if a sharp blade was cutting Yi Jiu's skin. Yi Jiu remained unmoved. Instead, he laughed heartily. A dignified overlord, in order to escape from a marriage, you smeared the name of a girl you don't even know. Have you ever thought that you've successfully escaped from the marriage? Then, what will happen to Miss Moo? Wing King. The groom enunciated each word coldly. This is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you. There's no other way. Who asked this lord to pursue her? Ijio spread out his hands and shrugged. Didn't you see Miss Moo's face was filled with rejection? As a qualified pursuer who wants to marry Miss Moo, naturally I have to help her, lest her reputation is ruined by you. Chapter 5104. Scram. The groom's thin lips moved as he spat out an icy cold word. Ijio stood in front of Yi Qing Luo. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he saw the young lady walking past him as she looked at the groom calmly. Overlord, your actions are really shameful. Have you recognized the wrong person, or are you just casually trying to catch a lady and coincidentally caught me? Even if I'm really the person you're looking for. I also want to tell you that you're really disgusting. The young lady's voice was still that soft. But the words she spat out. Her mouth was vicious. Moreover, it was extremely arrogant. The surrounding crowd sucked in a breath of cold air. This young lady actually scolded the overlord. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but scold. She even activated her ridicule mode. She scoffed lightly as her vision fell onto the demon palace and returned back to the groom. Since you've chosen to marry the demon palace lord, then reneging on the wedding ceremony. Your way of doing things is really heartless. This makes me have no choice but to make a conjecture as a conspiracy theory. Based on the rumored ability of the overlord, if he wanted to escape from the wedding quietly, there's actually no problem at all. But you purposely did it with such great fanfare. What's your intention? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as a cold arc flashed past the corner of her eyes. Let me make a bold guess, the overlord is provoking the internal strife between the demon phoenix continent and the demon palace. After Yi Qing Luo said this, the crowd who were originally discussing about Yi Qing Luo instantly shifted their focus. Because what Yi Qing Luo said indeed made sense. If the overlord wanted to escape from the wedding, there was no need for him to renege halfway through the wedding ceremony before reneging on it. And even announced it to everyone with such great fanfare. The reason why he reneged on it was because of the accompanying doctor from the demon phoenix continent. No one would believe it no matter who he gave it to. The groom probably didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be able to change the direction of the wind in just a few words. His pitch-black eyes which stared at Yi Qing Luo contracted slightly. Although it was very slight. But Yi Qing Luo, who had been staring at the groom, saw it clearly. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about the groom's intention, but looked towards the Devil Hall as the cold intent on her face slowly retracted. Sir Devil Hall, I'm so sorry. I can assure you that I have no interest in the person whom you're getting married to today. The Demon Hall had originally come here to put on a show. But he didn't even have time to say a single line. But because of Yi Qing Luo's interference, she didn't know whether to be angry or not. Without waiting for the Devil Palace to speak, the groom took another step closer to Yi Qing Luo. However, Wing 9 quickly intercepted him. The groom stared at Yi Qing Luo, enunciating every single word with a chilly glint in his eyes. Who exactly are you? This question made Yi Qing Luo laugh. You don't even know who I am, but you keep pestering me in private. Don't you think it's funny? She laughed mockingly. Overlord, your method is really lame. The groom clenched his fists tightly as his fingertips turned white, as his eyes seemed to be gathering boundless turbulent waves. Miss Moo, are you sure? You and my husband have no relationship? The Demon Hall frowned as he stared at Yi Qing Luo coldly. Yi Qing Luo smiled. I'm a married woman, what relationship can I have with him? To tell the truth, this is the first time I'm seeing him here. The demon hall's eyes were filled with suspicion. You keep saying that you're a married woman, but I've never seen your husband before. Chapter 5105. I suspect that you don't have any husband at all. The cold expression on the Devil Lord's face turned chilly. Moreover, I heard that you came all the way to Devil Head City to attend my wedding. Your motive is to snatch the bride, to snatch my husband, the Overlord. Am I right? When the last two words left her mouth, the Devil Lord raised his hand and clapped. Very quickly, there were two Devil Lord's guards, one on the left and one on the right, walking over. That person was Madame Huang Xi's previous personal maid, Hai Lan. Hai Lan was covered with injuries and her face was pale. When she saw the Devil Lord, she shrank back in fear. The Devil Lord's cold eyes looked at Hai Lan as he sneered, "Now, tell everyone what you heard in the Madame's residence." When she saw Hai Lan coming out, Yiqing Luo was completely sure. The reason why she almost fell off the horse. It was probably because of the two words "bride snatching," which spread to the Devil Lord's ears, which aroused suspicion. This was obviously. This Devil Lord and that fake Overlord knew about it. The woman beside Dmo Xian was Yiqing Luo. That was why he tried to test her, to find out if she was Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she calmly raised her slender brows. I'm not, don't be blind." Hai Lan's eyes widened. "The entire Madame's residence can testify that you came to Devil Head City to snatch the bride." Yiqing Luo smiled and asked in reply, "Since I want to snatch the bride, why must everyone know about it? Are you afraid that the Devil Lord doesn't know that someone is going to snatch the bride? Moreover, if I spread the news that I'm going to Devil Head City to snatch the Overlord, even a maid like you knows about it, then wouldn't Madame know about it? If Madame knew about it and still brought me to Devil Head City, you mean Madame has the intention to disrupt the Devil Lord and Overlord Great Rao's marriage ceremony? Is this what you mean?" Harlan's face turned pale as she questioned him word by word. No one had expected Yiqing Luo to directly deny it. She even covered the entire pot. If this matter were to nod, then it wasn't just Yiqing Luo alone who was suspected of snatching the bride. But it had risen to the height of the three Devil Continents and the Devil Lord. And, most importantly, if the Devil Hall were to forcefully push this responsibility onto Huang Sifu Rao, the Devil Hall would not be able to deal with him. It would definitely cause a backlash from the other two continents and other forces. After all, from Yiqing Luo's interrogation, the situation had already changed. Madame Huang Xi was not a fool. How could he have known that his accompanying physician would stir up trouble on such an important occasion and even bring him here? If Fu Rao's accompanying doctor really wanted to kidnap the bride, he would definitely die. Huang Sifu took on the heavy responsibility. Most importantly, this was the wedding ceremony of the Lord of the Devil Hall and Dizun. How could a mere physician kidnap the bride? What a joke. Everyone would start to suspect, was the Demon Hall trying to find an excuse to attack the Devil Continent? Thus, he rebounded completely. Hence, the Demon Hall could not acknowledge it. Yiqing Luo's counter-question was reasonable and reasonable. No. You really went to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride. Your husband is Lord Dizun. You want to snatch your husband from Lord Devil Hall? Harlan shouted in disbelief. Her eyes widened as her face was filled with panic. She heard the whispers around her and the way they looked at her, as well as the peach-robed black-haired young lady in front of her, looking down at her from above. Chapter 5106. The defense in Hai Lan's heart completely collapsed. She turned towards the direction of the demonic palace and screamed in panic, "Lord Demonic Palace, please believe me, I am absolutely not lying. It's her, she said it herself, she wants to snatch the bride. I don't dare to lie to you. But there wasn't any emotion on the demonic palace's cold face. Her face was cold as she stared at Hai Lan for a long time. Finally, her voice was icy cold as she spoke in a dignified tone, whether it's true or false, I will decide. Her gaze flickered. The demonic guards understood as they carried Hai Lan up from both sides and dragged her down. Harlan naturally understood what would be waiting for her if she continued to drag this out. She kept crying and begging for mercy. Her voice slowly disappeared from the wedding ceremony. The crowd's discussion quietened down. For a moment, the atmosphere was stiff. The demonic palace held the groom's arm as she looked at Yiqing Luo coldly. A pair of icy cold eyes carried a few sharp blades. I wonder if Dr. Mu has heard of this saying. Yiqing Luo's lips curled, please speak. There's no smoke without fire. She glanced sideways at the expressionless groom who was staring at Yiqing Luo with a burning gaze. If it wasn't for the fact that you really don't covet the overlord, why would there be such news? Most importantly, she paused slightly. Her tone suddenly turned sharp, the overlord seems to treat you differently. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged, if he has the intention to frame me, there's no smoke without fire. As for why the groom is like this, I'm also very curious. She smiled slightly as she was very calm. Before today, the groom and I have indeed not met before, so... For this answer, I'm afraid Lord Demonic Palace has to ask the people around you. The Demonic Palace's exquisite brows creased slightly. There were some subtle changes on his expression. Suddenly, a sharp voice was heard from the crowd, look at your vixen look, you only know how to seduce men at night. Who knows if you're taking the opportunity when Lord Demonic Palace isn't paying attention to give the overlord a flirtatious look. Following that, Jiang Shuang, who was dressed in a jade green long dress, rushed out in big strides. What do you mean you're a married woman? Call your husband out if you have the ability. I still want to ask him personally. Does he know that you've been seducing people outside? Jiang Shuanger's sharp words and stern countenance made the heavy atmosphere a little more turbulent. Yiqing Luo looked at Jiang Shuanger in surprise. Who would have thought that this woman would appear at this critical juncture? He was really stupid. Yiqing Luo gave a light laugh as she replied Jiang Shuanger's words calmly, I'm afraid. The minute my husband stands out, Big Sister Jiang's heart would be stirred and she would secretly send flirtatious glances towards my husband, so... In order to protect him, I can only hide him. Then, she gently stroked her cheeks with her slender fingers and said with a sweet smile, does Big Sister Jiang mean that I'm good-looking? I also think that I'm very good-looking. However, Big Sister Jiang, you don't have to feel inferior. Even if you're ugly, with Big Sister Jiang's identity, you won't have to worry about no one marrying you. The girl's voice was soft and gentle, and her tone was very calm. But every single word that came out of her mouth was pricked right into Jiang Shuanger's heart. You. Jiang Shuanger was so angry that her face turned pale as she gritted her teeth and stared at her angrily, you're obviously feeling guilty. How could a normal married woman possibly be so ostentatious outside? Chapter 5107. As Jiang Shuanger spoke, her gaze shifted to Wing 9. You keep saying that you're already a married woman, but you're the former Venerable the Arch, the latter King Hooked Wing. You are a vixen. Who didn't know? The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King hated women the most. On top of that, his face was extremely bewitching and bewitching. Very few women could surpass his peerless beauty. Because of this, there were rumors going around. The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King was a homosexual. This was probably the first time Zhong Rong saw the Wing King being so intimate with a woman, right? Moreover, Yi Wang had even stretched out his hand to hold the young girl's wrist. Now that Jiang Shuang'er mentioned it, everyone's gazes towards Yi Qing Luo were filled with different emotions. Let's not talk about whether or not this girl seduced the overlord behind the devil hall's back. It was this young lady who kept saying that she was already a married woman, but she didn't know how to distance herself from Yi Wang. This was enough. That was enough for everyone to despise him. It was no wonder that the lord of the demonic hall would suspect her. Seeing that the surrounding guests were all standing on his side, Jiang Shuang'er straightened her back proudly. What? Is it because you have no way to defend yourself? I'm just too lazy to talk to you, wasting my saliva. Yi Qing Luo glanced at her indifferently, her eyes filled with indifference. It was as if he did not take Jiang Shuang'er seriously at all. So in the demon domain, women are supposed to stay at home and take care of their husbands and children. Then, does this mean that after the devil hall and the groom get married, they should also hand over all the power of the devil hall to the groom? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up as she retorted with a smile. Jiang Shuang'er didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be so direct and wanted to refute. Don't explain. Yi Qing Luo impolitely interrupted her. What you said earlier revealed the meaning of this point. Yi Qing Luo spoke very quickly and in an imposing manner, absolutely suppressing Jiang Shuang'er. Although I'm a married woman, but that doesn't mean that I must stay by my husband's side. Furthermore, King Yi only looks up to me because of Fu Rao. Why did it become so unbearable in your mouth? I've heard a saying before. What a person sees is what he or she sees. You're dirty, so everything you see is dirty. Yi Qing Luo's explanation was so calm and composed. She was so calm that many people saw Wing Nine grab her wrist. They all felt that it was just an accident. When Yi Jiu heard this sentence, his thin lips curled upwards in a smile which didn't look like a smile, as he looked towards Yi Qing Luo. But ultimately he didn't expose Yi Qing Luo at this moment. Or to emphasize that Yi Qing Luo was his future princess etc. Jiang Shuang'er didn't know how to refute. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she glanced at Devil Hall and smiled, or Devil Hall also feel that after you and the groom get married, it will turn into internal affairs and you only need to revolve around this husband of yours. The Demon Palace. Of course not. The Devil Domain could allow Madame Huang Xi, the Devil Hall, and other similar women to wield power and become the ruler of a continent, or an existence that could keep the balance. Naturally, he acknowledged the woman's strength. Compared to the outside world, the demon region cared more about strength. The strong were respected. As long as one was strong enough, no matter if you were male or female, young or old, everyone would be willing to submit. Even if the woman got married, it wouldn't affect her own status. Yi Qing Luo's rhetorical question. It really made one unable to answer. Chapter 5108. The cold expression of the demon sovereign was incomparably gloomy. A pair of sharp and sinister eyes glared at Jiang Shuang'er. He gritted his teeth, this idiot. Jiang Shuang'er, who was being cut by the demon palace's malicious gaze, was so frightened that she couldn't stop trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. She clearly wanted to use this opportunity to curry favor with the demon hall and incite a conflict between the demon hall and that slut. This way, he could kill two birds with one stone. Not only could he gain the favor of the demonic palace, but he could also take the opportunity to get rid of that slut. But now, he had outsmarted himself. The demonic palace bore a grudge against her. At this moment, the atmosphere at the wedding ceremony was extremely strange. The guests did not know whether to leave or stay. No one spoke up to smooth things over. What a joke, at this critical juncture, who would dare to speak? This was a big wedding day, and the groom was going to regret it. The person who had their marriage annulled was the lord of the demon palace, who had the highest status in the demon domain. It was Di Zun who broke off the engagement in public. Di Zun had even grabbed a girl in public. He had broken off the engagement because of the girl. But the girl had explained it clearly. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed like Di Zun didn't want to marry the lord of the demonic palace, so he used her as cannon fodder. But now, even if they were cannon fodder, Di Zun pulled. This young lady would not be able to escape from being implicated. While everyone was lost in their thoughts, Devil Hall's red lips moved slightly as her eyes turned gloomy and cold as she stared at Yiqing Luo and slowly opened her mouth. Dr. Mu need not confuse the public and change the topic. I don't care about what Big Sister Jiang said. She clasped the groom's arm tightly as her vision wandered between the groom and Yiqing Luo, speaking in an icy cold tone. This highness only wants to know, this highness's groom, this highness's husband. Why would he embarrass this highness in public because of you? You have to ask him about that. Yiqing Luo replied innocently. In any case, he would carry out the, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anything, to the end. The demon hall pushed the groom. You. The bridegroom's elegant face was expressionless as that pair of surging black eyes stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. He said nothing. The pressure on his body was also extremely low. Those who were close to him found it difficult to even breathe. However, under the deep and burning gaze of the bridegroom, the girl hooked her pink lips without the slightest pressure, crossed her arms over her chest, and smiled calmly. Is the groom still racking his brains to come up with an excuse? I want to see your husband. That man who maintained the low pressure and remained silent, opened his mouth after Yiqing Luo's words ended. Immediately, the demon hall's expression became even uglier. He remained silent at her question. Instead, he answered the girl's questions at any time. The bridegroom had no intention of giving her face at all. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. From the looks of it, it seems that if I don't prove that I have a husband today, you guys aren't going to let me off. Meet her husband. This was because he was suspicious of her identity and was certain that Dmo Xian would not appear here, hence he made such a request. Or was it because he was certain that she didn't have a husband? However, one thing was certain. It didn't matter if the demonic hall suspected her identity or if they were testing her. The other party did not intend to let her leave this place alive. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted unknowingly. Suddenly, a slight sound rang out in the silence of the wedding ceremony, where only the sound of breathing could be heard. That was the sound made by the chair rubbing against the ground. Chapter 5109. Someone moved. Everyone immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw a seat at the corner. A fiery red figure slowly stood up. The man in the red robe had a tall and slender figure. He looked simple but luxurious. That grave and stern face was so cold that it was suffocating. He was Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master, Zhu Wu Axin. Towards this pavilion master Chu. Everyone in the Devil region had heard of his deeds, but they weren't familiar with him. They only knew that he was a cold-hearted man. Pavilion Master Chu stood up at this moment. What was he trying to do? Could it be that he felt that the atmosphere was too depressing and the things that happened were too boring? So he wanted to leave. With Pavilion Master Chu taking the lead, the other guests who wanted to leave would have the chance. Just as everyone was thinking about this, that cold man in red robe wasn't heading towards the entrance of the wedding ceremony. Instead, he was heading towards the direction of the Devil Hall and the young lady. Everyone had a blank and puzzled expression. What was Pavilion Master Chu trying to do? Yiqing Luo was also looking at Zhu Wu Axian. The moment she saw Zhu Wu Axian stand up, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. Based on her understanding of Zhu Wu Axian, this guy. Surely he wasn't intending to admit that he was her husband? Earlier at the splendid scene, she and Zhu Wu Axan were already very clear. Zhu Wu Axan should believe that she wasn't Yi Qing Luo. But now that Zhu Wu Axan stood up, once he admitted that he was her husband, then there would be no way to end this. If the other party suspected that she was Yi Qing Luo, then he would definitely know about Zhu Wu Axan's feelings towards Yi Qing Luo. At this moment, Zhu Wu Axan appeared. Basically, it was equivalent to peeling off her disguise. Although Zhu Wu Axan admitted it, it was probably to help her out of this predicament. But this was obviously a trap for her. The Devil Hall and the others had been staring at them. Yi Qing Luo couldn't give Zhu Wu Axan a meaningful glance. She could only frown as she looked at Zhu Wu Axan with an uneasy expression. Zhu Wu Axan seemed as though he didn't receive her offensive glare. Step by step, he got closer. Finally, he stood in the middle of the Devil Hall and Yi Qing Luo, about 3 steps away, and stopped. Wearing a bright red robe at someone else's wedding ceremony. Perhaps only Zhu Wuxin could do so. Most importantly, Zhu Wuxin was dressed in such a simple manner. They were even more dazzling than the newlyweds in front of them. The Demon Queen frowned. Pavilion Master Chu, Yu, Zhu Wu Axan's gaze unhurriedly fell onto Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows tightly. This girl really wanted to acknowledge him as her husband. She pursed her pink lips, and before Chu Wuxin could open his mouth, she spoke first, Pavilion Master Chu, before he could say anything. Suddenly, a familiar sandalwood scent lingered in his nose. Yi Qing Luo's heart inexplicably trembled. Is that kind of palpitating happiness? Even the profound phoenix ring, which was still dim, was slightly scorching her. The words that were about to come out of his mouth stopped because of these strange feelings. That pair of long and narrow eyes overflowed with joy. She lowered her head and looked at her white fingers. The profound phoenix ring's radiance was still dim. But that scorching feeling was definitely not an illusion. It was. Ah Xian. Had he come? Yi Qing Luo totally didn't care about the person in front of her. Instead, she immediately turned around and searched the surroundings, attempting to find that familiar figure. Chapter 51:10. The joy and agitated expression on the young lady's face were all taken in by Zhu Wu Axan. His cold and handsome face was covered with a layer of haze. He naturally could tell. The young lady's joy and agitation wasn't directed at him. He was staring at the unfamiliar delicate face in front of him. Every smile and frown was totally different from the young lady in his memory. Even her voice was different. However, he was able to superimpose the two of them together. Chu Wu Axan lowered his eyes slightly as he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Dash, thud, thud, thud. A set of slow footsteps was heard from afar. That sounded like the footsteps of some magical beast. The footsteps were slow, neither fast nor slow. Someone was here again. Everyone looked towards the direction of the sound. Thud, thud. The footsteps were getting nearer. A figure entered the main door of the wedding ceremony, which was made of flowers, and entered everyone's eyes. As compared to when Zhu Wu Axan stood up, it was even more eye-catching. Then, everyone saw a pig's head. Yes, they didn't see it wrongly. It was a pig's head that popped into the main door. The pig's head shook its 2 pink and tender pig ears, and a pair of pig's eyes darted around. Its body was like a hedgehog's hair as it spread out loosely. The entire pig had a relaxed posture. The crowd was in an uproar. Coming to attend the Lord Demon Hall and the Overlord Great Rao's wedding, and riding a mount into the wedding ceremony. Forget about the mount. But it was a pig. One by one, their gazes which were staring at that pig's head shifted away, indicating that they weren't too interested. But Madame Huang Xi's gaze which was staring at that pig was unblinking. That pig. Why did it look familiar? It seemed like that pig in her house. Zhu Sha. The young lady had already opened her mouth and called out that pig's name. When the young lady's voice rang, that tender pig ears instantly stood up. Following that pair of pig eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yuan Lu's shiny black pig eyes were filled with excitement. It moved its hooves as it pounced towards Yiqing Luo. With this leap, the whole pig entered the scene of the wedding ceremony. Everyone saw it. Sitting on the pig's body was a tall and slender figure. His bamboo-colored gown hung down and rested on the back of a pig that was as fluffy as a porcupine. His face was young and innocent, and his eyebrows were as black as ink. She had a pair of blue eyes that were as clear as water, like sapphire, and a pair of captivating red lips. His entire person was breathtaking, so obedient that it made one want to dote on him. What a handsome man. Who was this? When did such an obedient and handsome man appear in the infernal domain? The man riding on the pig trod on the ground covered with petals with a d-d-d sound. Then, it stopped beside Zhu Wuxin. He jumped down from Cinnabar's back. The bamboo-colored robe flowed down, leaving behind a streak of green. His voice was low and hoarse, as if it was mellow in wine. He was careless, but there was also a formless pressure on him. Listen, you want to see me? A voice that was neither too fast nor too slow resounded throughout the ceremony. Meet him. Everyone was still a little confused, not understanding what the man meant. But they heard the man's next sentence, I am Yu Er's husband, Chao Yun. His gaze looked straight at Yiqing Luo. Following that, he stretched out his arms towards the young lady as he gave an obedient and pure smile, Wife, I'm sorry, I'm late. Everyone drew in a breath of cold air. This man was actually Dr. Mu's husband. Chapter 51:11. The people from the Devil Hall kept on shouting that they had never seen Dr. Mu's husband before. She also believed that Dr. Mu's claim that she was a married woman was just an excuse to deny that she had any relationship with Dizun. Who would have thought that Physician Mu's husband would really appear? Moreover, this man looked very obedient and harmless. Compared to the young girl who was as pretty as a picture but had sharp words, they didn't seem to be from the same world. However, just as everyone was immersed in their own thoughts. Just a moment ago, she was still arrogant and confident, and her words were sharp as she faced the demon hall and the doubts of the people around her. She was like a goddess of war. It flew towards the man with the delicate and obedient face. The girl, who was as pretty as a picture and looked like the girl next door, finally revealed her feminine side. Then, she threw herself into the man's arms and hugged. Yiqing Luo buried her head in the man's chest, inhaling the familiar sandalwood fragrance, her long and narrow eyes curved, You're back. The girl's voice was soft as she said those words. Like a huge bell, it pounded on the man's heart. Dmo Xian's eyes were gentle as he slightly lowered his eyes, congealing the young lady's face, his voice gentle, Yes, I'm back. His big palm covered the back of the girl's head, tightly hugged her slender waist, I missed you. Me too. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up into a smile, becoming more and more radiant. Seeing that Dmo Xian was safe and sound. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. The demonic hall spread the news of his marriage with Dizun. Yiqing Luo had been worried that Dmo Xian had met with some danger, otherwise how would the Devil Palace possibly have the guts to create a fake overlord to marry her? Moreover, Dmo Xian had not gone to the Devil Forest to look for her. There was no news of him either. She couldn't help but think about it more. Now, he was relieved. "You're Dr. Mu's husband." Just as the two of them were being affectionate, the demon hall's questioning voice rang out, "How do you prove it?" She stared at the man suspiciously, her eyes cold. This girl, did she really have a so-called husband? Then, was she really not? The demon royal palace frowned. Her cold and beautiful eyes glanced sideways at the groom beside her. If that girl was as he had guessed. When she saw the groom, it was impossible for her to remain indifferent. Time and time again to test the waters. The other party's behavior made her doubt her conjecture. At this moment, when the girl's husband appeared, she was starting to waver. This was because she could see that the moment the man appeared, his expression changed. The light in the depths of the young girl's eyes and the way she looked at the man. It couldn't be faked. The man who had suddenly appeared was indeed the person that the young girl valued the most. Dmo Xian held onto Yiqing Luo's waist as he slightly raised his eyes, looking towards the devil hall, and beside her, that man who bore a striking resemblance to the overlord. He furrowed his brows and pursed his red lips. The demon hall also noticed it. The moment the man lifted his eyes and shifted his gaze away from the girl, the man's azure eyes, which were as clear as the ocean, suddenly surged with a turbulent wave. It was like a whirlpool. The moment their gazes met, Yi Zichen's heart sank. She even felt an indescribable fear welling up from the depths of her heart. That's right. It was fear. She, the dignified lord of the Devil Hall, controlled the entire Devil region. At this moment, she was actually afraid of a seemingly innocent and harmless man. This knowledge made the Devil Hall's heart thump fiercely. A woman's intuition told her. This man wasn't simple. Chapter 51:12. Demonic Palace's mind was filled with thoughts as she sized up the man in front of her seriously. She heard the man's mellow and husky voice, without any emotions, but filled with an unexplainable domineering aura. "What has the relationship between my wife and me got to do with you? Why do I need to prove it to you?" Demonic Palace's face turned cold. Ever since she became the lord of the Demonic Palace, it had been a long time since she met someone who dared to go against her. Her cold and elegant eyes stared at Dmo Xian's seemingly obedient and harmless face, as her voice was deep and treacherous. "Today, is this palace lord's and Sir Overlord's marriage ceremony." She seduced the Overlord, and made the Overlord to publicly regret this palace lord's marriage for her. "Now that you've come out and said that you're her husband, what's wrong with me asking you for proof?" The man's face didn't show much emotion. On this point, he was rather similar to the expressionless groom beside her. Demonic Palace pondered for a moment before continuing. "If you're really her husband, then, you should stand on my side and ask her how she hooked up with the Overlord." Dmo Xian's azure blue eyes turned incomparably sharp as he listened to the woman's words. Demonic Palace thought that he was enraged because of her words. Her cold and elegant red lips unconsciously curled up into a contented smile. But the next moment, she saw the man embracing the young lady in an absolutely protective manner as he encircled her in his arms. His gaze was cold as he stared at Demonic Palace. "It's your incompetence that you can't take good care of your own groom. Don't blame your incompetence on my wife." He paused slightly before continuing. "You said that my wife seduced the groom. Show me the proof." Incompetence, these two words were deeply embedded in Demonic Palace's mind. The groom broke the engagement on the spot of the wedding ceremony. It wasn't just the groom's problem. The bride had indeed failed. Demonic Palace didn't say a word. Dmo Xian glanced at the groom with a smile that didn't look like a smile as he spoke in a mocking tone. "Finally, because I'm her husband. No matter what happens, I will stand by her side unconditionally. And I believe in her. My wife, I dote on her. You, who do you think you are?" Every single word of his was trampling on the face of the demon hole. It was extremely humiliating. Some were angry, some were happy. When these words fell into Yiqing Luo's ears, it was like the sweetest honey in the world, sweet right into her heart. The girl's face was as beautiful as a painting. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, and the joy emitted from the bottom of her heart. Not far away, Yi Jiu and Zhu Wuxin saw it clearly. Light flowed in Zhu Wuxin's cold and deep eyes. In the end, they turned into a pool of stagnant water that was as still as water. They sank and could no longer cause any ripples. Yi Jiu propped up his chin with interest and clicked his tongue as he muttered to himself, "Aya, it's rare for a girl to fancy, but she already has someone in her heart. This king's future princess has run away again, what a pity. So, you've disrupted my wedding ceremony, and I can't pursue the matter." Demonic Palace sneered as he pushed the groom aside forcefully. "Do you see that? This is the girl you want. She already has a husband and doesn't even want to take a look at you." The groom staggered a few steps from the push. His face was gloomy as his deep eyes stared angrily at Demonic Palace. His low and hoarse voice was filled with threat. "Demonic Palace, if you still want the wedding to continue, then shut up." Demonic Palace opened his mouth but swallowed back his words. That cold and elegant face was covered with a thick layer of haze. Chapter 51:13. Ha! In this strange silent atmosphere, a soft heck was especially obvious. Devil Palace and the groom's vision turned over in unison. The frost in their eyes was like a sharp blade. Dmo Xian's expression was calm as he met their gazes, his dark red lips curled into a casual cold arc. That soft ha came from his mouth. "Devil Palace, you should rejoice. This wedding is now interrupted." The man's voice carried a hint of indifference and laziness, as if he was mocking something. Devil Palace's expression sunk, not understanding the man's words. Dmo Xian's gaze fell onto the groom as he gave a mocking smile. "An impostor, dare to impersonate the overlord in the devil region. You've got some guts." Dmo Xian's words left his mouth. Instantly it set off a huge uproar. Everyone looked at the groom in disbelief. "Impostor. Impersonate the overlord. This Dizun is a fake. How could this be possible? What rubbish are you talking about?" Devil Palace berated sternly as his eyes were filled with a chilly intent. "Whether it's rubbish or not, Devil Palace will find out soon." Dmo Xian's tone was indifferent as he looked at the groom with a smile which didn't look like a smile. "I wonder if this groom needs to quibble a little." The groom's gaze was cold and there was no expression on his handsome face. His ink-black eyes were like a sharp blade. "I don't need to explain." He had learnt the overlord's cold and aloof attitude. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she stared at the groom without blinking. Her eyes were filled with deep meaning. Actually, this impostor overlord. There was really no difference between him and Dmo Xian. No matter if it was in terms of appearance or character, it was almost a copy. Even when he was testing if she was Yiqing Luo. That emotion, that expression, that feeling. It was exactly the same as what Dmo Xian had expressed. If it wasn't for the fact that she had an inexplicable intuition towards Dmo Xian, plus her absolute trust towards Dmo Xian. She was afraid that when she saw this groom at the wedding venue, she really knew how to create trouble and ruin the venue. Wait. Copy. Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of something as her slender fingers clasped Dmo Xian's wrist tightly. The man lowered his head and looked at her. Yiqing Luo took a look at the groom as she suppressed her voice. That groom might be some kind of sorcery, a replica. This was similar to what she knew about clones in the 21st century. He had inherited the original owner's appearance, personality, and memories. Only then could they achieve a 100% similarity. However, in the end, a replica was just a replica. As long as he paid a little attention, he would be able to tell. But what Yiqing Luo was conflicted about was, if this groom before her eyes was really a replica of DMO Xian. Then was DMO Xian's profound grade also copied over? If that was the case, the bridegroom's strength was too strong. DMO Xian lightly patted the back of her hand and smiled. I'm here, everything's fine. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. He nodded at him, relieved. For DMO Xian to say this, it meant that he already had a plan in mind. He probably already knew the identity of the groom. Madame Huang Xi. The demon lord was furious. He pointed his gun at Huang Xi. This is the guest you brought. You're determined to disrupt my wedding, aren't you? Huang Xi was a little dazed when she was called out. She was the clearest about Yiqing Luo's motive for coming to Devil Head City. She was indeed here for the Overlord. Chapter 51:14. Now, another husband had appeared out of nowhere. And she could tell that their relationship was very good. They were a couple who loved each other deeply. Then, the bride snatching and mess up the place. Were they all lying to her? Huang Xi's heart was filled with complex emotions. She took a step forward and looked at the Devil Lord's enraged face. My accompanying doctor is definitely not someone who would purposely cause trouble. Dr. Mu's husband's words are definitely not to cause trouble for the Devil Lord. Huang Xi still chose to believe in Yiqing Luo unwaveringly. She deliberated over her words and said, Demonic Lord, just like what you said, there's no smoke without fire. Dr. Mu's husband actually questioned the emperor. Questioned the groom's identity, there must be a reason behind it. For Demonic Lord's lifetime happiness, it's best for Demonic Lord to investigate this. Demonic Lord's eyes were sinister as he sneered, there's no smoke without fire. All right. This lord shall give you a chance. Tell me, why is this groom an impostor? She flicked her sleeves and sat on a chair by the side. If you don't give me a clear proof today, the both of you, as well as the people from the Devil Phoenix continent, don't even think of leaving Devil Head City. Demonic Lord's imposing manner was overbearing as his words were filled with rage. There were quite a number of people from the Devil Phoenix continent. After hearing this sentence, their faces revealed a panicked expression. All of them were grumbling incessantly. But the young couple who stood in front of Demonic Lord were calm and composed. DMO Xian's dark red lips curled up as he spoke calmly. Unfortunately, I and the Overlord in God Realm have a drinking relationship, so we're not strangers. Coincidentally, my wife and I followed the Overlord to the Devil region to handle some matters, but we didn't expect to hear the news of the Overlord getting married to the Demonic Lord. Yiqing Luo continued the conversation as she looked at the groom with ridicule. You impostor, you think that the Overlord doesn't care about his own reputation, so you're so unbridled, right? She scoffed, using the Overlord's name to get married to the Demonic Lord. What a good plan. The groom's expression was gloomy and cold as he emitted an invisible aura, creating an oppressive might. Unfortunately, you've only missed one point. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up as she took a look at DMO Xian. Her eyes were tainted with a few traces of ridicule. The two of them looked at each other. DMO Xian already knew the young lady's plan. His blue eyes, which were as clear as the sea, gradually softened, revealing a doting expression. Yiqing Luo raised her chin. Her tone was filled with an imperceptible pride. The current Overlord already has someone in his heart. How could he bear to let the woman he loves misunderstand him? So, why would the Overlord spare a fake like you? The demon hall's sinister gaze shot over. It's just the two of you talking. Who knows what the truth is? What's the point of talking so much nonsense? Show us the evidence first. Dmo Xian glanced at the groom as his dark red lips moved. I think everyone knows what the Overlord's war pet is. The bridegroom's deep eyes flickered and he said coldly, Xiao Zhou. A snow-white nine-tailed holy beast. It could be said that it was the symbol of a venerable sovereign. This point, everyone who knew about venerable sovereigns knew. After the groom said out the nine-tailed fox's name, he continued, I came to the Devil region to get married to the Demon Hall, so I didn't bring Xiao Zhou along. So if you want to use Xiao Zhou to prove my identity, I'm afraid that won't work. Chapter 51:15. Dmo Xian's blood-red lips curled into a casual smile. Oh. Really? That seemingly obedient and harmless face revealed a hint of mockery at this moment. His gaze was still cold. Especially when he looked at the groom. Even if he was smiling. The smile didn't reach his eyes. At this moment, the groom's calm face finally showed some signs of change. He frowned as he stared at Dmo Xian, as though he was probing into something. At this moment, Dmo Xian raised his hand. His bamboo-colored sleeves fluttered, creating a smoke-like ripple. Howl! A clear beast's howl broke through the sky. Soon after, a snow-white nine-tailed fox descended from the sky, stepping on blazing sparks as it arrived majestically. As the wedding venue was built in Devil Head City's biggest public square, it had a heavenly layout. The nine-tailed fox landed accurately beside Dmo Xian. Its four limbs landed on the ground as its nine tails swayed in the wind. It was awe-inspiring and shocking. Although there were quite a number of guests present, they had only heard of the Overlord's mount, the nine-tailed fox, but had never seen it. But they had seen quite a number of them. When they saw that nine-tailed fox, quite a number of guests drew in a cold breath. That was indeed the Overlord's mount. That seemingly obedient and harmless man, who on earth was he? What relationship did he have with the Overlord? Why was he able to summon the Overlord's battle pet? And even able to instruct the Overlord's battle pet? When she saw Little Nine, Yiqing Luo already understood Dmo Xian's intention. Her lips curled as she continued Dmo Xian's words, the Overlord is already aware of this matter and specially asked my husband to bring Little Nine over to verify. Who is this impostor who married the Devil Hole? Yiqing Luo's slender hand raised as she pointed to the groom, Little Nine, go over and take a look. Is that your master? The last two words. The young lady's soft voice was melodious, but there was an obvious sense of ridicule in it. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with a playful sneer. Little Nine proudly raised that huge fox head. The fluffy fur was translucent and soft. That pair of blood-colored eyes looked towards the direction of the groom. The nine tails swayed gently. The guests who were in a heated discussion all held their breaths and stared at the space between Nine-Tailed Fox and the groom. He was extremely nervous. The instant Little Nine appeared, the scales in everyone's hearts were swaying left and right. Dr. Mu and his wife were deliberately disrupting the wedding and spreading rumors that the Overlord was an impostor. Then, how could the Sovereign's battle pets listen to Dr. Mu and his wife? That nine-tailed fox had been the Overlord's battle pet for many years. It was a battle pet that had signed a soul contract with His Majesty. On top of that, the nine-tailed fox was a sacred beast, and it was born with pride. Other than Dizun, no one else's orders would be obeyed. Thus, the nine-tailed fox obediently followed Dr. Mu and his wife. It must be His Majesty's order. As for the Overlord, everyone looked at the groom again. If the bridegroom was really a fake, how dare he impersonate the Overlord? She even pretended to marry a lord of the Demon Palace. This was not something that could be explained by courage. Little Nine took one step at a time towards the direction of the bridegroom. The fluffy and soft nine tails were swaying non-stop. That footstep, one step at a time, was gentle and graceful. Until the moment it got close to the bridegroom. Bam! A majestic profound ray struck down horizontally. Chapter 51:16. The bridegroom, who was dressed in a red robe, suddenly flew backward. Little Nine was stopped by a ray of profound light. The groom's figure had already leaped to the outside of the wedding hall. This action, it also proved that he was, without a doubt, an impostor. If he really was the overlord, why would he be afraid of Little Nine's approach? How could he escape? Catch that impostor! A voice came out of nowhere from the crowd. At that moment, all the guests rushed towards the direction of the groom. The moment the groom turned around and fled, the cold and elegant face of the demonic palace was covered with a thick layer of haze. That pair of beautiful but malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. As the crowd chased after the groom, she gritted her teeth and spat out 3 words, "Men, chase after him." The demon guards rushed forward to capture them. Following that, she looked at Yiqing Luo and spoke ruthlessly, "I didn't expect this Mr. Chow to have such a good relationship with the overlord, even allowing you to bring his battle pet along." Yiqing Luo nodded smilingly, "That's natural, the relationship between my husband and the overlord is something you can't imagine. How could they have imagined? These 2 people were the same person." The demon palace sneered, "Since young Master Chow said that the D-Zune is in the demon domain, why did he only let the 2 of you come to my wedding ceremony when he knew that there was an impostor?" She paused for a moment, then raised her voice. "Moreover, since the venerable sovereign has come to the devil area, shouldn't I do my duty as a host?" Heh, Yiqing Luo didn't give him any face as she chuckled. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a mocking arc. Her pink lips curled up, but her voice was soft and harmless as she said, "Lord Devil Palace, but such a small matter doesn't seem to require Lord D-Zune to personally deal with it, right? Moreover, since the overlord sent my husband here to resolve this matter, it means that the overlord doesn't want to be disturbed." She was just short of saying it directly. "Who do you think you are? Was it worthy for the divine venerable to show up in person?" Ha, ha! How would the Devil Palace not understand the meaning in Yiqing Luo's words? Her face immediately darkened. The wide sleeves of the red wedding robe wrinkled in her palms. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she couldn't see Devil Hall's murderous gaze. Instead she smiled as she continued, "Devil Hall, if it wasn't for the fact that my husband appeared in time, I'm afraid you would have to marry a fake overlord. So, shouldn't you thank me and my wife? I saved your future happiness." The demon lord was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "Thank you. Thank my ass. Because of the 2 of them." Her fiend hall had already become the joke of the entire fiend realm. How was she going to convince the masses in the future? When it came to the demon realm's demon palace, people would only think of a woman who married a fake venerable sovereign. But she couldn't have a fit. The 9-tailed fox, the venerable sovereign's battle pet, was still at the wedding. Marrying the fake D-Zune would be a disgrace to D-Zune's reputation. If she flared up now, when it came to the venerable sovereigns, it would be seen as coveting the venerable sovereigns. She hadn't forgotten what Dr. Mu had mentioned. The overlord had a woman he loved deeply, so much that he couldn't bear to let that woman misunderstand him. Which was her motive this time round, Yiqing Luo. Thinking in this way, the Devil Palace forcefully suppressed the anger in her. That cold and elegant face became slightly distorted because of this. Chapter 51:17. Indeed, I should be thanking you. When the Devil Palace said these words, it was as though she was gritting her teeth. She took a deep breath and continued, "So, I want to thank the both of you properly. Her vision glanced towards the servant. Bring Dr. Mu and Master Chow to stay in the most prestigious palace in the Devil Domain. I will definitely thank the both of you properly, to stop the tragedy of me marrying the fake overlord. Yiqing Luo heard the malicious intent in the Devil Palace's words and was about to reject. But her wrist tightened. Dmo Xian's large palm squeezed her palm as he smiled at her. Yiqing Luo stopped her words of rejection and allowed the servant to lead the way. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi's eyes were filled with worry as she called out to Yiqing Luo. Anyone could tell that the Devil Palace wasn't sincere in thanking them. Once this couple stayed in the Devil Palace, it would probably bode ill rather than well. Yiqing Luo took a look at Madame Huang Xi and was about to walk towards her. But she was stopped by the servant. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I'm Madame's accompanying doctor, and now that I have to separate from Madame, can't I even remind Madame of a few things to take note of? Although her words were directed at the servant. But it was obviously in the devil inquiry hole. The servant remained unmoved. It was until the Devil Palace nodded to the servant that the servant let go. Yiqing Luo sneered as she walked past the servant towards Madame Huang Xi. She lightly touched Huang Xi's hand as she spoke in a low voice. You and Zhu Sha leave Devil Head City first and return to Devil Phoenix Continent. Follow the method I taught you, soak for 4 hours every day, and after a long time, your body will definitely improve. I can't. Madame Huang Xi hadn't managed to say the word leave. The young lady's pink lips curled as she interrupted her words. Your body isn't well, so there's no point in staying here. Why not go back to Devil Phoenix Continent to recuperate and wait for me and my husband to look for you? Saying that, she squeezed Madame Huang Xi's hand. Madame Huang Xi's elegant face was filled with melancholy, but she could only sigh softly as she nodded her head. Yiqing Luo reminded her with concern before returning to Dmo Xian's side. Following that, the servant left. At this moment, it was not appropriate for the guests to discuss anything in front of the demon hole. Then, the crowd dispersed. Huang Xi's face was filled with worry as she followed the crowd and left the wedding ceremony. After leaving, the melancholy on her face immediately disappeared, and a trace of coldness flashed across her eyes. She glanced sideways at Hai Yun and Zhu Sha. Let's go. Return to the Demon Phoenix Continent immediately. Just as he finished speaking, he heard a low voice filled with ridicule. Tisk, Miss Mu's heart is all for you, but when Miss Mu was in danger, all you thought of was to leave Devil Head City. Madame Huang Xi. Has she become so timid? A man in a white robe appeared in the corner ahead. The man's long silver hair spread out on his shoulders. It made the man's handsome face look even more devilish. Yi Wang. Huang Xi frowned slightly. Why are you following me? If I hadn't followed you, I wouldn't have known that Madame was such a cowardly person. Yi Jiu chuckled, but his tone was mocking. Huang Xi's expression did not change as she calmly replied, whatever you say. Saying that, she walked past Yi Jiu with the intention to leave. But Yi Jiu went up to stop her. Are you really going to leave Miss Mu like that? Huang Xi pursed her lips slightly as that elegant face turned slightly pale. She fixed her gaze on Yi Jiu. Then, if it's Yi Wang, how confident are you to bring Dr. Mu and his wife out of the demon hall safe and sound? Chapter 51:18. Yi Jiu's expression froze as he fell into silence. Huang Xi said indifferently, if we act rashly, not only will we not be able to guarantee the safety of Dr. Mu and his wife, even I will not be able to escape. So you've decided to ignore her? Yi Jiu frowned, his face full of disapproval. Huang Xi suddenly laughed. Why does Yi Jiu care so much about Dr. Mu? Yi Jiu, Huang Xi continued, Dr. Mu already has a husband, and she has a good relationship with young Master Chow. I'm afraid Yi Jiu has no chance. It's true that this king admires Lady Mu, but it's not to the extent of stealing someone else's love. Egyo waved his sleeves. This king is only worried about Lady Mu. I'm also worried about her. Huang Xi lowered her head. Egyo should have heard what Dr. Mu said just now. So? Egyo asked. Huang Xi said, did Egyo not hear the hidden meaning behind Dr. Mu's words? Egyo thought for a moment, but still did not understand. What do you mean? Huang Xi was about to speak. Suddenly, an ice-cold voice that seemed to be wrapped in frost came from behind the two of them. Miss Mu's meaning is that, with Madame's strength alone, it is impossible to do anything. Why not return to the Demon Phoenix continent and borrow the power of the Demon Phoenix continent to restrain the Demon Hole? That cold and indifferent voice caused both of them to be stunned, and they immediately turned their heads around. Then, they saw the expressionless, ice-cold man walking towards them. Egyo frowned. It's you again. Pavilion Master Chu, you're really persistent. Zhu Wuxin did not even look at Egyo, but looked at Huang Xi indifferently. Madam, with the Demon Phoenix continent and the Red Clear Pavilion, do you have the confidence to overthrow Demon Head City's rule over the Demon Domain? When these words came out of Zhu Wuxin's mouth, Huang Xi and Egyo were shocked. Huang Xi and Egyo were so shocked that they couldn't regain their senses for a long time. When they finally reacted to Zhu Wuxin's words, their expressions changed. Pavilion Master Chu, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. If others hear your words, it'll be terrible. Zhu Wuxin expressionlessly repeated, just give me one sentence. Do you have the confidence or not? Another period of silence. Huang Xi pursed her pale lips and clenched her fingers. Pavilion Master Chu, how confident are you? Madam. Egyo furrowed his brows and reprimanded in a low voice. Did Huang Xi's words mean that she really wanted to join forces with the Red Clear Pavilion to overthrow the Devil Hole? Huang Xi's expression was resolute. Today's matter has already turned the demonic lord into a joke. She will definitely not let this matter rest so easily. She will definitely not let Physician Mu and his wife off. Most importantly, the Demon Palace has long since planned to invade the Demon Realm and rule it alone. Huang Xi raised her eyes and looked at Egyo. Don't tell me you haven't noticed these abnormalities. Wing 9 fell silent. How could he not have sensed it? The movements of the Demon Hall were not big, but they were definitely not small either. The rulers of the 3 devil continents knew what they were doing. They were also secretly prepared. But no one pointed it out. Huang Xi didn't look at Egyo anymore. Instead, she looked at Zhu Wuxin. What's the relationship between Pavilion Master Chu and Physician Mu? Why, do you want to help her? Zhu Wuxin lowered his eyes, his voice cold and somewhat hollow. For her, I should be a problem. Devil Hall Castle, within a luxurious palace. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian sat on the chair. Yiqing Luo sized up the surrounding environment. This palace, as compared to Huang Xi's courtyard, was much more luxurious and exquisite. It was more like an exquisite cage. Yiqing Luo didn't need to walk out to guess. There were probably quite a number of devil guards guarding the entrance of this palace. Chapter 51:19. Not to mention that there were quite a number of devil guards hidden in the dark. Since Yiqing Luo had followed the servants to this place, she had no intention to escape. Anyway, Xian was by her side. She had no fear. Yiqing Luo sat on the redwood chair and placed the palm-sized 9 on the tea table. Her fair fingers were fiddling with the soft fur on 9's body. 9's forelegs were facing downwards and its 9 soft tails were wrapped around Yiqing Luo's hand. Its feet were also pulling her hand. Yiqing Luo was having a great time playing. Ever since she changed her looks. She didn't see her family's few war beasts. Especially when they reached the devil's domain, her connection with the war beasts was cut off. Scene 9 made her think of her adorable Chi-Chi, Tsundra Chi-Yen and those adorable war beasts. Why did you come here alone? Dmo Xian's azure blue gem-like eyes were fixated on her without blinking. It was as if she was the only one he could see in his eyes. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as her fingers pinched one of Nine's tails while smiling. If I didn't come, how would I know? That you're getting married. She paused and smiled. The marriage partner, isn't it me? The surroundings of the palace were filled with devil spies. Now that Dmo Xian had asked directly, it was obvious that he had set up an enchantment to block off those devil guards spying. Yiqing Luo was assured as she replied. My marriage partner is only you. The man's voice was mellow as his eyes were filled with love. Yiqing Luo stopped fiddling with Nine as her eyelids lifted as she stared at the man. Then why did you leave me behind and leave alone? I thought I would be able to return as soon as possible. Dmo Xian explained warmly, but when I returned, there were no signs of you in the devil's forest and beside. There were quite a number of devil's corpses. The gentleness in his eyes deepened at that time. My heart was in a mess. The obedient and harmless-looking man's eyes were filled with gentleness, as though water could be squeezed out. It made the man look especially young and tender. It made one want to pull him into one's embrace and cherish him. Yiqing Luo's stare was a little uncontrollable. Although she was used to seeing this face along the way. But after not seeing him for so long. At this moment, he took a closer look. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. The dignified Di Zun had such a harmless face. If the news got out, even venerable sovereign's dignity would be affected. Let's see if you still dare to abandon me on your own. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess, but her words were full of threats. Dmo Xian shook his head. I won't do it again. I'm already scared this time, there won't be a next time. Even if she fainted again. He would carry her and walk with her. His Luo heir, he was someone who would never let others be at ease. It was best to keep him by her side. Yiqing Luo nodded smilingly. It's good that you know to be afraid. Then, he changed the topic. What did you do during the time you were away? Profound flame pivot diagram. Dmo Xian spat out 5 words. Yiqing Luo's eyelids twitched as she unconsciously loosened her grip on 9 tails. She sat up straight. Have you found the lair of the mystic dragon? Not yet, but I have some clues. Dmo Xian's expression congealed slightly. I can roughly confirm the location, but the Devil's Palace's marriage a few days ago made me have a bad premonition. Yiqing Luo nodded. At this juncture, the Devil's Palace got married, moreover it's with an impostor. It really makes one ponder deeply. Chapter 51:20. Initially, Yiqing Luo was just guessing. Devil Palace wanted to make use of this marriage ceremony as an opportunity. Making use of the opportunity to trap the various powerhouses who came to attend the wedding ceremony. So as to catch them all in one fell swoop. But later on the bridegroom tried a few times and finally broke off the marriage. Which made Yiqing Luo dispel this idea. Based on my analysis, I feel that Devil Palace and the impostor's marriage, the motive should be to lure out Yiqing Luo, which is me. Yiqing Luo guessed, at the wedding venue, that impostor had been testing me several times, possibly suspecting my identity. Or perhaps, to be more accurate, someone is making use of the marriage ceremony to prove that Yiqing Luo is in the devil region. Because, if Yiqing Luo was really in the devil region, hearing the news of the overlord marrying Devil Palace Lord, based on her character, she would definitely come to the venue, and if she didn't flip the place upside down, she would absolutely not give up. So when Devil Palace heard that Yiqing Luo's current identity, which was Dr. Muyu, wanted to go to Devil Head City to snatch the bride, they started to suspect that Dr. Muyu was Yiqing Luo. Hence, there were a few rounds of testing after that. Dmo Xian's eyes sunk. Then, the person who lured out and wanted to verify, is. The two of them exchanged glances and spat out 3 words at the same time, Secluded Palace. Except for Secluded Palace. There wouldn't be anyone who, in order to verify, to lure her out, would go through so much trouble. Furthermore, before the connection, Jiang family's aristocratic elders were so anxious to stop her from entering the Devil region. There was a possibility that this Devil region hid a huge secret of Secluded Palace. That was why Secluded Palace was so worried that Yiqing Luo would appear in the Devil region. Something which made Secluded Palace so concerned and afraid. She had 0 interest. But if the Devil region had already got involved with Secluded Palace, then Nine's appearance, and earlier when Dmo Xian mentioned that Overlord was in the Devil region, then it would be completely exposed. On the other path, the fake Dmo Xian and fake Yiqing Luo who attracted Secluded Palace's firepower. Secluded Palace would definitely speed up the Devil region's actions. Don't worry. Dmo Xian saw the worried look on the young lady's face and his dark red thin lips curled up slightly as he smiled warmly. With the acute senses of the Palace of Darkness, it's only a matter of time before they discover that the 2 people heading towards the other road are imposters. Even if the Palace of Darkness finds out, they will not be able to guess our current identities. At the wedding, Yiqing Luo's performance in front of the fake overlord's probing had already successfully dispelled Devil Hall's guesses. Adding on to the fact that Dmo Xian appeared as Yiqing Luo's husband. As long as the 2 of them could control themselves, they would not arouse any suspicions. However, if the 2 of them wanted to find the mystic dragon's lair, it would be much more troublesome. There would probably be countless pairs of eyes staring at them from all around the demon domain. Yiqing Luo tugged on Nine's tail again. The furry touch made her restless heart calm down. If it really has something to do with the Palace of Darkness, we can investigate what kind of shocking secrets the Palace of Darkness is hiding here. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and took a look at Dmo Xian. I somehow feel that Secluded Palace is very concerned about the Devil domain. Dmo Xian was about to say something. Suddenly his dark red lips stopped his words. Following that, his deep eyes took a look at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo instantly understood. Chapter 51-21. Someone was here. And at this moment, the only person who would come would probably be the battalion, Demonic Palace. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled slightly as she casually lowered her eyes and her vision fell onto Nine. Her fingers were rubbing Nine's body. And when Demonic Palace stepped into the palace, what she saw was this scene. An imperceptible look of astonishment appeared on her cold face, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She stared at the 9-tailed fox in the young lady's hands. That palm-sized soft 9-tailed fox was wrapped around the young lady's fingertips, like an adorable pet. Who could tell? That was the accompanying war pet of the Overlord, the one who brought about endless massacres the moment it appeared. If it wasn't for the fact that she had seen it with her own eyes. Demonic Palace probably couldn't believe that the 9-tailed fox which was rubbed flat in the young lady's hands was the one and only sacred beast 9-tailed fox in the world. Devil Hall's suspicious and deep contemplative gaze sized Yiqing Luo up from head to toe. The Overlord's only war pet, and also the symbol of the Overlord's great mercy. What it represented was the Overlord's great mercy face. But now, this was totally humiliating the Overlord. But the 9-tailed fox was obviously enjoying it, totally not feeling the humiliation of being teased as a pet. What was the relationship between this young lady and the Overlord? How could she be so familiar with the nine-tailed fox? Demonic Palace, what's the matter, just say it. A clear voice that did not contain much emotion rang out. Demonic Palace regained her senses as she met with a pair of azure blue eyes. She couldn't help but shiver slightly, as though there was a chill running up from the bottom of her feet. Her exquisite brows creased tightly as she kept her emotions in check. Who are the both of you? Demonic Palace walked in and sat opposite Yi Qing Luo. Her gaze was extremely sharp. She even emitted an invisible pressure. Probably with the intention of forcing Yi Qing Luo to answer the question. But facing Demonic Palace's overbearing manner, the young lady's brows were delicate and gentle. She casually grabbed one of Nine's tails, swinging it in her hand as she said, "Who are we? Lord Demonic Palace should have investigated clearly, so why bother asking?" The demon hall did not refute. He raised his chin slightly and said, "People of the immortal world, what is your purpose in coming to my demon region?" Her words showed that she had done a thorough investigation of their identities. Young Master Chao of the Chao family, and Mu Yu, who was not favored by the Chao family. The demon hall had not only investigated their identities. Even their social circle was thoroughly investigated. He did not find any connection between them and Dizun. She really couldn't understand it. How could the man who had been described as a god by the various realms be so familiar with this couple? Yi Qing Luo raised her pink lips with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Purpose. Didn't my husband already pass through? Why doesn't Lord Devil Palace understand? The girl's tone was soft and gentle as she addressed him respectfully as Lord Devil Palace. But in the ears of the demon hall, they could only hear a thick sense of mockery. It was especially ear-piercing. Yi Qing Luo paused for a moment as her smile became even more radiant as she continued, "We're here on behalf of the Overlord." Before the demon hall opened his mouth, the young lady continued in a serious manner, "Don't ask me what we're here for, the Overlord didn't tell us." The words that were in the demon hall's mouth were stuck in his throat. That cold and solemn face was filled with gloomy clouds. However, the young lady seemed as though she couldn't see it. Chapter 51-22. She even smiled brightly at Demon Palace. "Don't forget, Sir Demon Palace, you're keeping us here not to question us, but to repay our gratitude." The young lady's long and narrow eyes were filled with radiance. Demon Palace's expression sunk even further. Yi Qing Luo was fearless as she continued, "So, Sir Demon Palace, why don't you talk about your motive?" Demon Palace's expression congealed. "What motive do I have? I'll have to ask Sir Demon Palace about this." The young lady intentionally emphasized on the word, "sir." It was obviously a form of respect. But from the young lady's words, there was an inexplicable sense of sarcasm. Demon Palace's face turned cold. "I don't understand what you mean. I thought Sir Demon Palace came up with all sorts of questions, so you're going to be honest with us." Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue as she shook her head. "Since Sir Demon Palace wants to continue acting dumb, then treat it as if I've never asked. Be honest." Demon Palace murmured these 4 words as a cold glint flashed past his eyes. "What can you tell me?" Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she propped her chin as she pondered seriously. "Perhaps I can tell you, where is the real Overlord?" The cold glint in Demon Palace's eyes intensified as a glint of resentment flashed past. Was this young lady doing this on purpose? She almost got married to the fake Overlord. How would she dare to meet the real Overlord? Wasn't it embarrassing? Did she still have any face all right? Demon Palace seriously suspected that this young lady was humiliating him. "Perhaps we can help you achieve what you want." Dmo Xian opened his mouth calmly, cutting off Yi Qing Luo's teasing words. His gaze was indifferent. "What does Demon Palace think about what I want?" Demon Palace sneered. "Then tell me, what do I want?" "Youth, Power. Dmo Xian's reply was very straightforward, without any hesitation. His deep black eyes were as dark as a deep pool, and the devil region. When Dmo Xian mentioned the first two words, Demon Palace's expression had already changed. When the last two words were spoken, her brows were tightly knitted as she stared at Dmo Xian with some probing and suspicion. On what basis do I believe that you have this ability? You have no choice but to believe. Dmo Xian replied indifferently, you have no other choice. Such a nonchalant attitude was simply arrogant in front of the arrogant devil hole. However, the demonic hall did not do anything. She clasped her fingers together and her body tensed up. She was trying her best to suppress her anger. Only when his emotions had stabilized did he speak coldly, I have many choices. Why did I choose you? What a joke. If there were so many choices, the both of us husband and wife wouldn't have appeared here. Dmo Xian lifted his eyelids slightly. What's Lord Devil Palace's decision? Silence. There was dead silence. After an unknown period of time. In the end, it was the demon hall who spoke, breaking this strange atmosphere. She asked, what do you want to know? The secret of the Nether Palace. In the demonic domain. Dmo Xian's deep eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the demonic palace. When these words left his mouth, the woman froze for a moment. She pursed her red lips tightly as the haze in her eyes dispersed. I don't know what you're talking about. You can go back and consider it carefully. By then, you can tell me your answer. Dmo Xian was neither fast nor slow, as though he had already expected the demonic palace's reaction. Chapter 51-23. It was this kind of nonchalant attitude. On the contrary, it made one feel that what demonic palace's answer was not important to him. As though everything was within his control. Demonic Palace didn't know why, but she felt that the man in front of her wasn't as obedient and harmless as he looked. He wasn't just a god realm aristocrat who had nurtured such an imposing manner. Just a gaze or a simple syllable. That was enough to shock her. This imposing manner. It was innate. And there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Somehow she felt as though she had seen it somewhere before. Demonic Palace pursed his lips tightly, his cold and gloomy face was filled with complicated emotions. After that, he turned around and left without a word. Until he was far away. Yiqing Luo carried little Nine and stood up. Are you so sure that she will tell us everything she knows truthfully? She won't. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand towards her. His obedient and harmless face wasn't as cold and emotionless as it was tainted with a gentle smile. You can only believe half of her words. So she will definitely choose us, right? Yiqing Luo walked over and buried her body into his arms. Dmo Xian smiled. Her choice isn't important. Right from the start. Dmo Xian didn't believe Demonic Palace at all. But if Demonic Palace was willing to say a little, he would be able to deduce many things from it. But even if Demonic Palace wasn't willing to say, at most it would just be more troublesome for him. In fact, it was indeed as what Dmo Xian said. That night, when Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were already resting, a creak sound was heard outside the window. Demonic Palace snuck into the room. Yiqing Luo, who had just laid down, what happened in the day had already made her mentally exhausted. Now she wasn't even allowed to sleep properly at night. Wasn't this Demonic Palace too energetic? It seemed that she, the bride, was the most tired in the day. Luckily the both of them knew that they were surrounded by spies, so they slept in their clothes. When she heard the sound, Yiqing Luo had already sat up and leaned against the headboard as she glanced lazily at Demonic Palace. I say, Sir Demonic Palace, you're a dignified Sir Demonic Palace, isn't it a little inappropriate to climb into our room in the middle of the night? The moonlight was like water and the demon palace who was dressed in a crow-feathered black robe stood in the room as a pair of icy-cold beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Yi Qing Luo. The young girl yawned, her posture was very indifferent. You should at least consider it. We are husband and wife. It's really inappropriate for you to climb the window without saying a word. But, after all, the Devil Hall Lord's wedding was called off halfway through. He doesn't understand this logic. I'll reluctantly forgive you. The girl's voice was soft, and her tone was languid. Every single word stabbed into the heart of the demon hall. The demon hall was so angry that his complexion turned extremely unsightly. Under the dim light, he looked extremely malevolent. She clenched her fists tightly, her killing intent bursting forth. A clear voice suppressed all the undercurrents in the room. Has the Devil Hall thought it through? Dmo Xian lit a candlestick and sat on the chair which was shrouded in a layer of velvet light. The demon crown prince suppressed his anger and walked over. This crown prince does not know much. These words indicated that she had agreed to Dmo Xian's conditions. Devil Region. More than half of the forces belong to secluded palace, right? Dmo Xian didn't beat around the bush as he asked directly. The demon hall muttered to himself for a moment, yes. This wedding, I'm afraid it's arranged by secluded palace. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly as she asked with a smile. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 51-24. Devil Hall's cold eyes sunk as he took a look at Yi Qing Luo, not really wanting to answer her question. However, Dmo Xian had no intention to speak again. It was obvious that he wanted her to answer the girl's question. The demon royal highness pursed her red lips and coldly said, yes. Yi Qing Luo put on a curious look, then do you know, that the groom is a fake overlord? The young girl's face was delicate and sweet. When she blinked her long and narrow eyes, she looked completely harmless. He seemed to be asking casually. The demon crown prince felt his heart being stabbed again. He suppressed his anger and said, this crown prince does not know. Then, how did Lord Devil Hall get to know and fall in love with that fake overlord, to the point of getting married? Yi Qing Luo's face was filled with gossip. The demonic sovereign frowned and looked at Lin Moxuan. This sovereign is here to discuss cooperation with young Master Chao. However, the man had no intention of opening his mouth. That pair of eyes that were as blue as water stared at the young girl with doting eyes. It seemed that as long as the girl was happy, he wouldn't have any objections. In other words, if the Devil Hall wanted to discuss things properly, they would have to go through with it. He had to satisfy the girl's curiosity. The demon princess's fingers tightened as she replied, I and that person only met for the first time when we decided to get married. In other words, there was no emotional foundation at all, and they were going to get married immediately. Yi Qing Luo sat up straight and scooped Nine up from the side, hugging him in her arms. Look at it in detail, the marriage between you and that fake overlord from Gloomy Palace. The demonic palace was silent for a moment. He stared at the nine-tailed fox in the girl's arms for a long time before he slowly spoke about the marriage. The Gloomy Palace and the Demon Hall had colluded long ago. The reason was that the Gloomy Palace had promised the Demon Hall to help her rule over the Demon Realm and become the one and only ruler of the Demon Realm. Just a few days ago, the Palace of Gloomy Shadows suddenly came looking for her. He wanted her to marry Dizun, and he even announced it to the entire Demon Realm. He wanted everyone in the Demon Realm to know about it. The Demonic Hall did not agree at first. But the Anyo Palace tempted her with the identity of a venerable sovereign. In this world, which woman did not want to marry a venerable sovereign who was like a god? If the demon realm could ally with the imperial palace, with the help of Dizun, her status would definitely rise along with it. It would be even easier for him to achieve his goal. In the end, the Devil Hall agreed to marry Dizun. It was at that time. This was the first time she had been in close contact with the legendary overlord. The demonic palace knew that there must be a reason why the Palace of Gloomy Shadows asked her to marry Dizun for no reason. After that, there was news from the Demon Phoenix continent that someone was planning to travel thousands of miles to the Demon Head City to snatch the bride. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness ordered her to keep a close eye on the person who wanted to kidnap the bride. Hearing Devil Palace's words, Yiqing Luo touched her chin as she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. The words of the Demon Hall confirmed her previous guess. The Gloomy Palace was using this wedding ceremony to lure her out. Especially when this identity of hers had turned the Anshu Hall upside down in the God world, and killed an elder of the Jiang clan. Now, he had come to the demon domain to kidnap the bride. It was no wonder that the Palace of Darkness would suspect her. After understanding these matters, Yiqing Luo put on a solemn expression as she looked towards the Devil Hall. Lastly, I want to ask a very serious question. The Devil Palace frowned as he looked at her. Yiqing Luo maintained her solemn expression as she said word by word, you really don't have any other thoughts towards Dizun? Devil Hall. The corners of her eyes twitched as she didn't want to answer Yiqing Luo's question as she turned her head towards DMO Xian. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.